When your boss is the kind of man who makes people disappear, you learn to stay invisible. But the moment I told Adrian Moretti I had a date, something in his eyes cracked, and I realized I'd already crossed a line I didn't even know existed. That date was supposed to be my escape into normalcy. Instead, it became the night I discovered I was already trapped in a game where the stakes were my life. Now I'm standing in his penthouse, my dress torn, my date's blood on my hands, and Adrian looking at me like I'm the only thing in his world worth protecting. If you want to see how far into darkness this story goes, stay until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this tale has traveled. Evelyn Carter had been working for Adrian Moretti for exactly 4 months when she realized her boss was probably a criminal. Not probably, definitely. The signs were there from the beginning, scattered like breadcrumbs she'd been too desperate to notice. The way men in expensive suits spoke to him in hushed tones in corridors she wasn't supposed to walk down. The phone calls he took behind closed doors, his voice dropping to a register that made the hair on her neck stand up. The meetings that happened at midnight. The visitors who looked like they'd stepped out of a film about men who broke kneecaps for a living. But Evelyn needed the job. Needed it badly enough to ignore the warning bells, to file away the inconsistencies, to pretend she was just an executive assistant in a normal import-export business. The money was obscene. Triple what she'd made at her last position. Her apartment in Brooklyn had gone from a shoebox with roaches to a one-bedroom with actual sunlight. She could afford groceries without calculating every item. She'd even started saving. So she made the coffee, organized the schedules, stayed invisible. That was the key, she'd learned. Invisibility. Adrian Moretti didn't need a personality from his assistant. He needed efficiency. Silence. Someone who could anticipate his needs without asking questions, who could disappear into the wallpaper when his business associates arrived. Evelyn was good at disappearing. She'd had practice. The office occupied the top 3 floors of a building in Tribeca, all glass and steel and views that made you forget you were looking at a city where people struggled. Adrian's personal office was on the 43rd floor, a space decorated in blacks and grays with furniture that probably cost more than her college tuition. She'd been in that office exactly twice in 4 months. The first time was her interview. Adrian had barely looked at her, scanning her resume with the kind of detached interest someone might give a menu at a restaurant they didn't want to be at. He'd asked 3 questions. She'd answered them. He'd hired her on the spot. The second time was 3 weeks ago, when she'd accidentally walked in on him and 2 men who looked like they settled disputes with violence. She'd frozen in the doorway, the coffee tray in her hand suddenly weighing 1,000 pounds. Adrian had looked up. Their eyes met. "Out," he'd said. Not angry, just factual. She'd backed out so fast she'd nearly dropped the tray. He hadn't mentioned it again. Neither had she. But something had shifted after that. She'd catch him watching her sometimes, his dark eyes tracking her movements across the outer office where she worked. Not in a way that felt predatory. More like he was calculating something, measuring her. It should have scared her more than it did. Evelyn tried not to think about what that said about her. The outer office was her domain, a sleek space with floor-to-ceiling windows and a desk that was more of a command center. She managed Adrian's calendar, screened his calls, coordinated with the other departments. She interfaced with people whose job titles made no sense. Logistics coordinator, acquisition specialist, risk management consultant. She was pretty sure none of them did what their titles suggested. Marcus was one of the few people who treated her like an actual person. He was Adrian's driver, though that word felt insufficient for what he actually did. Evelyn had seen the shoulder holster under his jacket, had noticed the way he positioned himself in rooms, always near exits, always watching. "You settling in all right?" he'd asked her one morning, appearing at her desk with coffee that was infinitely better than the sludge from the break room. "I'm managing," she'd said, accepting the cup with a grateful smile. Adrian's not a bad boss. Marcus had leaned against her desk, casual but watchful. "Fair, pays well, values loyalty." The way he'd said that last word made it clear what happened to people who weren't loyal. "I'm just here to do my job," Evelyn had replied. Marcus had studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Smart girl. But staying invisible was getting harder. Adrian had started asking for her specifically, not just for coffee or files, but for tasks that seemed designed to keep her close. Sitting in on meetings to take notes, even though everyone knew he recorded everything. delivering packages to people whose addresses were in parts of the city where taxis didn't like to stop, picking up dry cleaning that came back in garment bags she wasn't supposed to look inside. Each task was a test. She could feel it, and she kept passing. "Miss Carter." Evelyn looked up from her computer to find Adrian standing in the doorway of his office. He was in shirt sleeves, his jacket discarded somewhere, his tie loosened. It was late, past 8. Most of the building had emptied hours ago. "Yes, Mr. Moretti?" He didn't correct her anymore. She'd tried Adrian once, at his instruction during her first week, but it had felt wrong in her mouth. Too familiar. Like stepping over a line she couldn't see but knew was there. He'd noticed her retreat back to formality but hadn't pushed. "I need you to take something to Romano's," he said, producing a manila envelope from behind his back. "Tonight." Romano's. She knew that name. A restaurant in Little Italy that was never open but always had cars parked outside. Evelyn stood, smoothing her skirt. "Of course. Who should I ask for? Marco will be expecting you." Adrian crossed to her desk, extending the envelope. When she reached for it, his fingers brushed hers. The contact lasted a half-second too long. She pulled back like she'd been burned. If he noticed, he didn't show it. "Don't open it. Don't let it out of your sight. Hand it directly to Marco. No one else." "Understood." "Marcus will drive you." That was new. Usually she took a car service for these errands. Adrian was watching her again with that calculating look. "This is important, Miss Carter." "I understand," she repeated. Something flickered in his expression. Approval, maybe. Or something else she couldn't name. Good. The drive to Romano's took 20 minutes. Marcus didn't make small talk, which Evelyn appreciated. She clutched the envelope in her lap, very aware of its weight, its significance. Whatever was inside could be anything. Money, documents, instructions for something she didn't want to imagine. She didn't look. Romano's was a small place wedged between a bakery and a closed storefront, its windows covered with faded curtains. Marcus pulled up to the curb but didn't kill the engine. "I'll be right here," he said. It sounded like a promise. Inside, the restaurant was dim and smelled like garlic and old cigarettes. A man at the bar looked up when she entered, broad-shouldered, graying at the temples, with the kind of face that had seen things. "I'm looking for Marco," Evelyn said, keeping her voice steady. The man's eyes went to the envelope in her hands. "You're Moretti's girl." She bristled at the phrasing but didn't correct him. "I have a delivery." Marco took the envelope, turning it over in his hands. Then he looked at her. Really looked, in a way that made her want to step back. "You know what you're carrying?" he asked. "No." "You ask questions?" "No." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You'll last longer than the others." Evelyn didn't ask what happened to the others. Back in the car, Marcus glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "You all right?" "Fine." "Marco say anything to you?" "Just that I'll last longer than the others." Marcus snorted. He would say that. Dramatic bastard. Despite herself, Evelyn almost smiled. When they got back to the office, Adrian was still there, standing at his windows with a glass of something amber in his hand. He didn't turn when she entered. "It's done," she said. "Any problems?" "No." "Marco behave himself?" "He was fine." Adrian turned then, studying her face. "You're not afraid of him?" It wasn't a question. "Should I be?" Evelyn asked. "Most people are." "I'm not most people." The corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile. "No, you're not." The moment stretched between them, elastic and strange. Evelyn became aware of how alone they were, the building empty, the city spread out below them like a circuit board of lights. "You should go home," Adrian said finally. "It's late." "What about you?" "I have work." He always had work. Evelyn collected her bag, her coat. At the door she hesitated. "Mr. Moretti?" "Yes." "Why me?" He could have pretended not to understand, could have deflected. Instead, he took a sip of his drink and said, "Because you see what this is and you stay anyway. That's rare." She didn't know what to say to that. "Good night, Miss Carter." "Good night." That conversation should have been a warning, a sign to update her resume, to start looking for something normal, something safe. Instead, Evelyn went home, and couldn't stop thinking about the way Adrian had looked at her, like she was a puzzle he was trying to solve, a variable in an equation that didn't quite balance. It should have scared her. It didn't. That scared her more. The shift happened on a Tuesday. Evelyn had a date. His name was Daniel Hayes, and she'd met him at a coffee shop near her apartment. He was normal, accountant normal, with glasses and a friendly smile and absolutely nothing dangerous about him. They'd chatted about weather and weekend plans, and the kind of safe, boring topics that felt like breathing after 4 months of whatever the hell her job had become. He'd asked for her number. She'd given it. 3 days later, he'd texted asking her to dinner. Evelyn had stared at her phone for a full minute before responding yes. She needed this, needed normal, needed to remember what it felt like to be a regular person with a regular life, not someone who delivered mysterious envelopes to men who looked like they'd stepped out of a Scorsese film. The date was set for Friday. Italian place in the West Village, Daniel's choice. She didn't tell anyone at work, but on Friday afternoon, as she was preparing to leave, Adrian appeared at her desk. "You're leaving early," he observed. It was 5:47. She usually stayed until 7. "I have plans," Evelyn said, keeping her tone light. "Plans." "Dinner. With a friend." Adrian's expression didn't change, but something in the air shifted. "A friend?" "Yes." "Male or female?" The question was inappropriate, intrusive, none of his business. Evelyn met his eyes. "Male?" Silence. Adrian's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "I see. Is there something you need before I go?" she asked. For a moment he just looked at her, really looked, with an intensity that made her breath catch. Then he stepped back, sliding his hands into his pockets with studied casualness. "No. Enjoy your evening, Miss Carter." "Thank you." She gathered her things quickly, very aware of his presence, of the weight of his attention. When she stood to leave, he was still there, watching her. "Miss Carter." She turned back. "Yes?" "Be careful." The words hung between them, loaded with meaning she couldn't quite parse. "It's just dinner," she said. Adrian's smile was thin. "Of course it is." But Daniel had chosen a restaurant called Lucia's, cozy, candlelit, with checkered tablecloths and a wine list that wasn't trying too hard. Normal, safe, exactly what Evelyn needed. He was already there when she arrived, standing to greet her with a smile that seemed genuinely pleased. "You made it," he said. "Did you think I wouldn't?" "I was maybe 60% sure." She laughed, and it felt good, easy. "That's fair." They ordered wine, made small talk about their weeks. Daniel told a story about a client who'd tried to claim their pet iguana as a dependent. Evelyn countered with a carefully sanitized version of a coworker who'd accidentally sent a confidential email to the entire company. It was nice. It was normal. It was exactly what she'd wanted. Until it wasn't. "So," Daniel said, refilling her wine glass, "you work in Tribeca, right?" "Yes." "Import-export business." Evelyn's hand paused halfway to her glass. "How did you know that?" Daniel smiled, but it had changed somehow, sharpened. "You mentioned it when we met." Had she? Evelyn tried to remember their conversation at the coffee shop. She'd been careful, she thought, vague about her job. "Did I?" she said carefully. "Must have." He took a sip of his wine, watching her over the rim. "What exactly does your company import and export?" Red flag, bright red, waving frantically. "Various goods," Evelyn said. "Furniture, textiles, that sort of thing." "That sort of thing," Daniel repeated. "And your boss?" "Adrian Moretti." "What's he like?" The temperature in the restaurant seemed to drop 20 degrees. Evelyn set down her wine glass very deliberately. "I don't think I mentioned his name." "Didn't you?" "No." Daniel leaned back in his chair, and the transformation was complete. The friendly accountant was gone, replaced by someone calculating and cold. "Let's skip the dance, Evelyn. I know who you work for. I know what he does. And I know you're in a position to be very helpful to some people who would be very grateful." Her heart was hammering, but she kept her voice level. "I think you have the wrong idea about my job." "Do I?" He pulled out his phone, tapped the screen, turned it to face her. Photos. Her entering Romano's, leaving with Marcus, standing in Adrian's office. You've been working for Moretti for 4 months, Daniel continued conversationally. You have access to his calendar, his communications, his meetings. That makes you valuable. To who? People who'd rather not see Moretti expand his operations into territories that don't belong to him. Other families. Rival organizations. This wasn't just about Adrian, this was about whatever power structure existed in the shadows of the city. The hierarchy she'd only glimpsed. I don't know what you think I can do. Information, Daniel interrupted. That's all. Who he meets with, what deals are in play, where his shipments are going. He leaned forward. We're not asking you to plant bombs, Evelyn. Just pay attention. Share what you see. You'd be compensated generously. You want me to spy on him. We want you to protect yourself. Moretti's empire is built on violence and intimidation. He's not the man you think he is. I never thought he was a good man, Evelyn said quietly. Then help us bring him down. She should have been terrified. Should have been calculating her exit, planning how to get away from this table and this man in this nightmare scenario. Instead, she felt something else. Something unexpected. Anger. No. Daniel blinked. No? I'm not interested. You don't understand what you're... I understand perfectly. Evelyn stood, grabbing her purse. This date is over. His hand shot out, gripping her wrist. Not painfully, but firm enough to stop her. Sit down, Evelyn. We're not finished. Let go of me. You need to think very carefully about what you're doing. The people I represent don't like being told no. And Adrian Moretti does? Something flickered in Daniel's expression. Fear, maybe. You're going to tell him about this conversation. It wasn't a question. I'm going to leave, Evelyn said, and you're going to let me. You stupid girl! His grip tightened. You think Moretti cares about you. You're a tool to him, disposable. The moment you stop being useful, let her go. The voice came from behind Evelyn, calm, professional, and utterly terrifying in its implications. Marcus. Daniel's hand dropped from her wrist like she'd burned him. Evelyn turned to find Marcus standing 3 feet away, his hands in his pockets, his expression pleasant. To anyone watching, he looked like a concerned friend checking on a date gone wrong. But she could see the gun under his jacket. So could Daniel. This doesn't concern you, Daniel said, but his voice had lost its confidence. The lady wants to leave, Marcus said mildly. So you're going to sit there and finish your wine while she does exactly that. Do you know who I know exactly who you are, Hayes, and I know who sent you. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to stay in this chair for the next 10 minutes. Then you're going to leave, go home, and call your bosses to tell them this approach didn't work. Clear? Daniel's jaw worked. This isn't over. Yeah, it really is. Marcus gestured to Evelyn. Come on. She didn't argue. Outside, the cool evening air hit her face like a slap. Her hands were shaking. How did you... Adrian had me follow you, Marcus said simply. Said he had a bad feeling. Of course he had. The car was parked half a block down. Marcus opened the back door, but Evelyn didn't get in. I need to call him, she said. He knows. He's waiting. Her stomach dropped. Waiting where? Office. It's almost 9. Marcus just looked at her. Right. Adrian was always there. The drive back to Tribeca happened in a blur. Evelyn's mind was racing, trying to process what had just happened, what it meant, what she was supposed to do now. Daniel had been sent to recruit her, to turn her. That meant someone had identified her as a vulnerability, a potential opening in Adrian's organization, which meant Adrian's world was even more dangerous than she'd realized. And she was in it. The building was dark except for the top floors. Marcus rode up in the elevator with her, silent but present. When the doors opened, he gestured for her to go ahead. He's in his office. Aren't you coming? This conversation's not for me. Evelyn walked through the outer office, her office, and stopped at Adrian's door. It was open. He was at his desk, still in his shirt from earlier, sleeves rolled up. He looked up when she appeared, and something in his expression made her chest tight. Not angry, worse than angry, worried. Miss Carter, he said quietly. Mr. Moretti. Come in. Close the door. She did, her legs feeling unsteady. Adrian stood, moving around the desk to lean against it, arms crossed. Tell me what happened. So she did. All of it. The coffee shop meeting, the date invitation, Daniel's questions, the photos, the offer to spy, her refusal. Adrian listened without interrupting, his face carefully neutral. When she finished, silence filled the office like water. "You said no," he finally said. "Yes." "Why?" The question surprised her. "Because it was wrong." "Wrong?" Adrian's laugh was short, bitter. "Not because you were afraid of what I'd do if I found out?" "Should I be? Afraid of you?" He pushed off the desk, closing the distance between them in 2 strides. Evelyn held her ground, even though every instinct screamed at her to step back. Adrian stopped inches away, close enough that she could smell his cologne, could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. "Yes," he said softly. "You absolutely should be afraid of me." "But I'm not." "I know." His hand came up, hovering near her face, but not quite touching. "That's the problem." Evelyn's breath caught. "What problem?" "You were supposed to stay invisible," Adrian said, his voice rough. "You were supposed to be just another assistant, someone competent and forgettable who I could keep at arm's length." "I didn't do anything." "You did everything." His hand dropped. "You saw what this is and you didn't run. You took my tests and passed them without flinching. You looked at men like Marco and didn't blink. And now someone's trying to turn you because they think you matter. Do I?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. Adrian's expression cracked just for a moment. "Yes." The word hung between them, loaded with more weight than 3 letters should carry. "Adrian, they'll come at you again," he interrupted, stepping back, rebuilding his walls. "Different approach, different people. They know you're close to me now. That makes you a target. I can handle myself. Against trained operators? Professionals who do this for a living?" He shook his head. "You're smart, Evelyn, but you're not equipped for this." "Then what do you want me to do? Quit?" "I want you to be safe." "I'm not leaving." The words surprised them both. Adrian stared at her. "You should." "Probably, but I'm not." "Why?" Because walking away felt like surrender. Because despite everything, the danger, the darkness, the very real threat that had just materialized over wine and pasta, the idea of going back to a normal job, a normal life, felt impossible now. Because looking at Adrian Moretti made her feel alive in a way that safety never had. She couldn't say any of that. "I need the money," was what came out instead. Adrian's smile was sad. Liar. "Maybe." He moved back to his desk, pouring himself a drink from the crystal decanter there, offered her one. She shook her head. "If you stay," he said, "things change." "How?" "Protection, 24/7, someone with you at all times when you're not in this building. That's non-negotiable. You're in the game now whether you want to be or not. That date tonight? That was a declaration. The Rossi family just made you a person of interest." Evelyn sank into the chair across from his desk, the reality settling over her like a weight. The Rossi family. "They control the ports. I've been moving into their territory. They want leverage." Adrian took a drink. "They thought they could flip you, use you to feed them information, sabotage operations from the inside. And when I said no? They'll try something else, or someone else will." "Someone else?" "There are 5 major families in this city, Evelyn. I'm in a delicate balance with all of them. Any one of them would love to have an asset inside my organization." He looked at her over his glass. "You are now that potential asset. I won't help them. I know, but they'll keep trying until they believe you, which means proving your loyalty in ways that can't be faked." The implication hung heavy. "What does that mean?" she asked. "It means you stop being invisible. It means if you're going to be a target anyway, we make it clear whose side you're on." "And how do we do that?" Adrian set down his glass. "You move closer, visibly, publicly. You become someone it would be foolish to touch because the consequences would be too severe." Understanding dawned. "You want to make me untouchable by making me yours?" "Yes. That's not really a choice." "No," Adrian agreed. "It's not. Not anymore." Evelyn should have been angry, should have railed against being maneuvered into a corner, having her life upended because she'd been in the wrong place at the wrong time, taken the wrong job. But under the fear and the shock was something else. Relief. Like she'd been waiting for permission to stop pretending this was temporary, that she was just passing through Adrian's world on her way to somewhere else. Okay, she heard herself say. Okay? I'll do it. Whatever needs to be done. Adrian studied her for a long moment. You should go home. Think about this with a clear head. My head is clear. Evelyn, I'm not changing my mind. Something shifted in his expression. Relief, maybe, or resignation. Marcus will take you home. Someone will be posted outside your building tonight. And tomorrow? Tomorrow we start making sure everyone knows exactly where you stand. She stood, collecting her purse. At the door, she paused. Adrian? He looked up. Thank you for sending Marcus. His smile was slight but genuine. I told you I had a bad feeling. You were right. I usually am. The drive home was quiet. Marcus pulled up to her building, and sure enough, there was another car already there. A man in a dark suit nodded to Marcus through the window. That's Tony, Marcus said. He'll be here all night. You see anything weird? You call me. My number's being sent to your phone now. Evelyn's phone buzzed in her purse. Okay. You did good tonight, Marcus added. Not many people would have walked away from that table. I didn't have much choice. You had every choice. You chose right. Inside her apartment, Evelyn locked the door and leaned against it, her heart finally catching up with everything that had happened. She'd gone on a date, a normal date, and it had turned into a recruitment pitch for corporate espionage against her boss who ran a criminal empire. And instead of running, instead of calling the police or packing a bag or doing any of the sensible things a rational person would do, she'd come back to Adrian and agreed to bind herself even more tightly to his world. What did that say about her? Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You made a mistake tonight. Daniel, or whoever he worked for. Before she could respond, another text came through. This one from Marcus. Don't answer, block and delete. She did. Then she poured herself a glass of wine and stood at her window, looking out at the city that suddenly felt different. More dangerous. More real. Somewhere out there, people were making plans about her, seeing her as a piece on a board, a tool to be used or a threat to be neutralized. And somewhere in Tribeca, Adrian Moretti was probably still at his desk, working through scenarios, building strategies to keep her safe. Because she mattered. He'd said it out loud. Evelyn took a sip of wine and wondered when she'd stopped being afraid and started being curious. When danger had transformed from something to avoid into something to walk toward. Maybe it was the moment she'd taken this job. Maybe it was tonight when she'd looked Daniel Hayes in the eye and refused. Or maybe it was 4 months of watching Adrian Moretti move through his world with absolute certainty, wielding power like a scalpel and wondering what it would feel like to stand beside him instead of behind him. Her phone buzzed again. Adrian this time. Get some sleep. Tomorrow starts early. She typed back. What's tomorrow? Breakfast with the Castellano family. You're coming with me. Why? Because I'm making a statement, and you're it. Evelyn stared at the message, her pulse quickening. This was it. The point of no return. She could still back out, could call in sick, pack a bag, disappear into the vastness of the city, and build a different life. Safe, normal, forgettable. Her fingers moved over the screen. What time should I be ready? The response came immediately. 7. Wear something that makes a statement. What kind of statement? The kind that says you're exactly where you're supposed to be. Evelyn smiled despite herself. See you at 7. She finished her wine and went to bed, very aware of Tony sitting in his car outside, of Marcus probably reporting back to Adrian, of wheels turning in motion she'd set in play by saying no to Daniel Hayes. Tomorrow she'd walk into a room full of dangerous people on Adrian Moretti's arm. Tomorrow she'd become visible. Tomorrow everything would change. But tonight, in the darkness of her apartment with the city humming below, Evelyn Carter closed her eyes and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Anticipation. Evelyn's alarm went off at 5:30, which was absurd considering she'd barely slept. Every time she'd closed her eyes, she'd seen Daniel's face across that table, heard his voice offering her money to betray Adrian, felt the cold calculation behind his accountant's smile. She showered in water hot enough to hurt, standing under the spray until her skin turned pink and her thoughts stopped racing in circles. The mirror was fogged when she stepped out, which felt appropriate. Everything in her life had gone hazy around the edges, the clear lines between right and wrong blurring into something she didn't have words for. Her closet presented a problem she hadn't anticipated. "Wear something that makes a statement," Adrian had said. But Evelyn's wardrobe was designed for invisibility: blacks, grays, navies. Professional, forgettable. Exactly what she'd needed when staying out of sight was the goal. That wasn't the goal anymore. She settled on a dress she'd bought on impulse 6 months ago and never worn. Deep burgundy, fitted but not tight, with a neckline that suggested confidence without trying too hard. Paired with black heels that added 3 inches and made her feel like she could handle whatever today threw at her. The woman in the mirror looked different, still her, but sharper somehow, less apologetic. Her phone buzzed at 6:45. Downstairs. Evelyn grabbed her bag and coat, checked that Tony was still in his car outside. He was, sipping coffee and reading something on his phone, and headed down. Marcus was leaning against the town car, but it was Adrian who stood by the rear door, checking his watch. He looked up when she emerged from the building, and something flickered in his expression before he locked it down. "Miss Carter." "Mr. Moretti." He opened the door for her himself, which felt significant in ways she couldn't articulate. She slid into the leather interior, and he followed, settling beside her with the kind of casual proximity that made her hyper-aware of every inch of space between them. Marcus pulled into traffic without a word. "Did you sleep?" Adrian asked. "Some." "Liar." The corner of her mouth twitched. "You told me that last night, too." "You made it easy." He was watching her with that analytical look she'd come to recognize. The Castellanos are old money, old power. Vincent Castellano runs the legitimate side: real estate, construction, political connections. His brother Sal handles everything else. Everything else being the parts that don't appear on tax returns. Evelyn absorbed that. "And we're having breakfast with them because Vincent's been making noise about my expansion into Brooklyn. He thinks I'm encroaching. I think he's being territorial about territory he barely uses." Adrian's smile was thin. "This meeting is about establishing boundaries, showing respect, making sure he understands I'm not trying to start a war. And I'm there because walking in alone signals weakness. Walking in with you signals I have nothing to hide, that my operation is stable enough I don't need to keep my people in the shadows." It made a twisted kind of sense. In a world where perception was currency, showing up with her, the assistant who'd turned down a recruitment pitch from a rival family, sent a message about loyalty and strength. "What do I need to know?" Evelyn asked. "Vincent will try to read you, figure out what you are to me, what you know, whether you're a liability or an asset. Don't volunteer information, but don't dodge questions either. Be exactly what you are: competent, observant, and loyal." "To you?" "Yes." Adrian shifted, angling toward her. "There's something else. After last night, people will be watching to see how I respond. If I hide you away, they'll assume you're vulnerable, a weak point they can exploit. And if you don't hide me, then they see you as protected, off limits, someone it would be foolish to touch." Evelyn's heart was doing something complicated in her chest. "How do we make that clear?" Adrian's gaze held hers. "By making it obvious you're under my protection. Visibly. Undeniably." "That sounds like you're asking me to play a role." "I'm asking you to let people draw their own conclusions. Some of those conclusions might be personal. Understanding clicked into place. You want them to think we're involved. I want them to think touching you means going through me. How they interpret that relationship is up to them." It should have made her angry, being used as a prop, a strategic piece in whatever chess game Adrian was playing with the other families. But sitting in the back of this car, watching the city wake up around them, Evelyn found she wasn't angry at all. She was curious. "And if they ask directly," she said, "about us? Then we don't deny it. Even though it's not true." Adrian's expression was unreadable. "Isn't it?" The question hung between them, loaded and dangerous. Before Evelyn could figure out how to respond, Marcus spoke from the front seat. "We're here." The restaurant was in Midtown, tucked into a building that probably predated the Depression. The kind of place that didn't advertise, didn't need to, catering to people who'd been coming here for generations. Adrian exited first, then extended his hand to help her out. His grip was warm, steady, and he didn't let go immediately. Instead, he tucked her hand into the crook of his arm, the gesture somehow both old-fashioned and possessive. "Stay close," he murmured. "Follow my lead." Inside, the restaurant was all dark wood and white tablecloths, with waiters who moved like ghosts and patrons who spoke in low voices. A man near the back stood as they approached, tall, silver-haired, with a face that had aged into authority. Vincent Castellano. "Adrian," he said, extending his hand. "Good to see you." "Vincent." Adrian shook his hand, then gestured to Evelyn. "This is Evelyn Carter, my executive assistant." Vincent's eyes swept over her, assessing. "Miss Carter, a pleasure." "Mr. Castellano." Evelyn shook his hand, matching his grip. "Please sit." Vincent gestured to the table where another man already waited, younger, broader, with eyes that tracked movement like a predator. "My brother, Salvatore." Sal didn't stand, just nodded. "Moretti." Adrian pulled out Evelyn's chair before taking his own, a small gesture that didn't go unnoticed. She could feel Vincent watching, calculating. Coffee appeared without anyone ordering, then pastries, fruit, enough food for twice their number. "I appreciate you making time," Vincent said, spreading butter on a croissant with the kind of precision that suggested he did everything with precision. "I know you're busy." "Never too busy for you, Vincent." Vincent took a bite, chewed thoughtfully. "I've been hearing interesting things about your Brooklyn operations." "Oh?" "Expansion, new partnerships, shipments running through ports that used to be quiet." Adrian sipped his coffee. "Business is good." "That's what concerns me." Vincent set down his pastry. "Brooklyn's been peaceful for years. My family has interests there, investments. When someone new starts making moves, it creates tension." "I'm not looking to create tension." "No?" Sal spoke for the first time, his voice rough. "Then what are you looking to create?" Adrian didn't rise to the bait. "Opportunity. For everyone. Rising tide lifts all boats." "Mixed metaphor," Sal muttered. "Sal." Vincent's tone held a warning. He turned back to Adrian. "You understand our position. We're not opposed to growth, but we need assurances. Guarantees that your expansion won't disrupt our existing arrangements." "What kind of guarantees?" "Territory agreements, revenue sharing on overlapping operations, advance notice of major moves." Vincent smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Partnership, Adrian, not competition." Evelyn watched the exchange like a tennis match, each word carefully chosen, weighted with meanings she could only half grasp. This wasn't a negotiation. It was a test. "Partnership implies equal investment," Adrian said. "What are you bringing to the table? Stability, political cover, labor unions that won't cause problems with your shipments." Vincent leaned back. "And most importantly, peace. No conflicts with other families who might take issue with your growth." Translation: play ball or face coordinated opposition. Adrian set down his cup. "I'm not interested in revenue sharing." The temperature in the room dropped. Sal's hands flattened on the table. "You're making a mistake." "Maybe, but I'm making it on my terms." "Adrian," Vincent started, "I'll agree to territory agreements, advance notice of major moves. But my operations are my operations. You want a piece? You bring me something worth buying in for." Vincent's jaw tightened. "You're being unreasonable." "I'm being clear. There's a difference." Evelyn felt the tension coiling around the table like a living thing. Her instinct was to shrink back, make herself small, let the men handle their business. But that wasn't why she was here. "Mr. Castellano," she said, her voice cutting through the standoff. 3 pairs of eyes swung to her. "May I ask a question?" Vincent's expression shifted. Surprise, maybe curiosity. "Of course." "You mentioned political cover and labor unions. Are those services you currently provide to other families? Or would this be a new arrangement specific to Mr. Moretti's operations?" Smart question. Neutral. But it forced Vincent to either admit he was offering something he already gave away, or confess he was asking for payment for services not yet rendered. Vincent studied her for a long moment. "You're well informed, Miss Carter." "I pay attention." "Clearly." He turned back to Adrian. "Your assistant makes an excellent point. Let me be frank. We're willing to extend certain courtesies to your operations, not because we profit directly, but because we value stability over conflict. Revenue sharing was perhaps aggressive, but some form of consideration would be appropriate. Such as, Adrian asked, reciprocal arrangements. You need labor, we provide it. We need logistics, you facilitate. Mutual benefit without formal partnership. Evelyn could see Adrian calculating behind his careful expression. This was better, cooperation without subordination. That's workable, Adrian said finally. Details to be negotiated. Of course. Vincent's smile returned, warmer now. I'm glad we could reach an understanding. The rest of the breakfast passed more smoothly, conversation drifting to safer topics. Real estate markets, upcoming elections, the Yankees' prospects. Evelyn mostly listened, but whenever Vincent or Sal addressed her directly, she answered with the same careful balance of knowledge and discretion. She was being evaluated. She knew it. They all knew it. When the meal concluded, Vincent walked them to the door personally. Miss Carter, he said, taking her hand, a genuine pleasure. Adrian's fortunate to have someone so capable. Thank you. I hope we'll see more of you. Vincent's eyes flicked to Adrian. In future meetings, I find your perspective refreshing. Adrian's hand settled on the small of Evelyn's back. She's integral to my operations. I can see that. Vincent released her hand. Adrian, we'll have our people work out the details. I look forward to a productive relationship. As do I. In the car, Evelyn waited until they'd pulled into traffic before speaking. Did I overstep? No. Adrian was looking at her with something that might have been approval. You gave him a way to back down without losing face. That was smart. I wasn't sure if I should say anything. Vincent respects intelligence. You showed him you're more than decoration. That's important. Why? Because now he knows I don't bring people to meetings unless they're useful. Which means you're not just my assistant. You're someone who contributes. Someone worth protecting. The logic was circular and calculating and entirely in keeping with the world she'd stumbled into. What happens now? Evelyn asked. Now we wait. Vincent will reach out in a few days with proposed terms. We'll negotiate. Probably reach an agreement that gives everyone enough to walk away satisfied. And the Rossi family? The ones who sent Daniel? Adrian's expression hardened. They'll hear about this meeting, about you being there, handling yourself well. That'll make them reconsider their approach. Or escalate it. Possibly. He turned to face her fully. Which is why I'm moving you into the building. Evelyn blinked. The office building? There's a residence floor, 6 apartments for key personnel. You'll take one. 24-hour security, controlled access, proximity to the operation. That's non-negotiable. You can't just, I can, I am. Adrian's tone left no room for argument. Your current apartment isn't secure. After last night, every family in the city knows who you are and where you live. I can't protect you there. So I'm a prisoner now? You're protected. There's a difference. Evelyn stared at him, anger and something else warring in her chest. And if I refuse, then you quit. Walk away now before this gets deeper. I'll set you up somewhere else, different city, new identity. You'll be safe. He was giving her an out, one last chance to escape before the door closed completely. She should take it, should recognize this for the warning it was. Instead, she heard herself say, when do I move? Something shifted in Adrian's expression. Relief, maybe, or resignation. Today. Marcus will help you pack. You'll be settled by tonight. I have a lease. I'll handle it. My things, bring whatever matters. Anything else, we'll replace. It was happening so fast, her life being reorganized by someone else's decisions, her independence being traded for protection, whether she agreed or not. The smart thing would be to fight it, assert her autonomy, demand a say in decisions about her own life. But Evelyn was starting to realize that smart and safe weren't the same thing. And she'd stopped prioritizing safe the moment she'd called Adrian instead of the police last night. Okay, she said quietly. Adrian studied her face. You're sure? Are you giving me a choice? Always. It just might not be a good one. Despite everything, she almost smiled. Then I choose this. Why? The question from earlier, coming back around. Why stay? Why walk deeper into something that could swallow her whole? Because normal felt like dying slowly. Because danger made her feel awake. Because looking at Adrian Moretti made her want to know what it felt like to be someone who didn't apologize for taking up space. Because I'm tired of being invisible, Evelyn said. Adrian's hand found hers, his thumb brushing across her knuckles. The touch was brief, almost casual, but it sent electricity up her arm. You're not invisible, he said. Not anymore. The move happened with military efficiency. By the time they reached the office, Marcus had already called ahead. When Evelyn arrived at her apartment at noon, there were two men waiting, professional movers who packed her life into boxes with practiced speed. She kept out what she needed for the night. Everything else disappeared into a truck. The apartment Adrian had arranged was on the 39th floor, 3 below his own office. It was bigger than her Brooklyn place, furnished in the same blacks and grays as the rest of the building, with floor-to-ceiling windows that made the city look like a painting. You can change anything you want, Marcus said, setting down the last box. Furniture, colors, whatever. Just tell facilities. Evelyn stood in the middle of the living room, feeling unmoored. This morning she'd woken up in her own place. Now she was living in a building owned by a man who ran a criminal empire, surrounded by security, playing a role she didn't fully understand. You good? Marcus asked. I don't know yet. He nodded like that made perfect sense. Adrian wants you to rest. No work today. Get settled. Figure out where everything is. Someone will bring dinner around 7. I can order my own dinner. Yeah, but you won't have to. Marcus headed for the door, then paused. For what it's worth. You handled yourself well today. With Vincent. Not everyone could do that. I just asked a question. You asked the right question at the right time. That's a skill. He smiled. You're going to do fine here. After he left, Evelyn unpacked mechanically, hanging clothes in a closet twice the size of her old one, arranging toiletries in a bathroom with heated floors and a shower that could fit 4 people. Everything was perfect. Sterile. Not hers. She was standing at the windows, watching the city move below, when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Then curiosity won. Hello? Evelyn Carter. A woman's voice, smooth and cultured. We haven't met. My name is Isabella Rossi. Evelyn's blood went cold. How did you get this number? Please don't be alarmed. I'm calling as a courtesy, woman to woman. I have nothing to say to you? Then just listen. Isabella's tone remained pleasant. You made an impression on my nephew Daniel. He told me you were quite firm in your refusal. Good. Then we're done. Not quite. You see, Daniel's approach was clumsy, too direct. I prefer a more nuanced conversation. There's nothing to discuss. Of course there is. You're an intelligent woman in an impossible position. Adrian Moretti is a dangerous man, Evelyn. Charming, certainly. Protective, when it suits him. But his world destroys people. Especially people who get too close. Is that a threat? It's a warning from someone who's seen it happen. Isabella sighed. I'm not asking you to betray him. I'm offering you a different option, a way out before you're too deep to surface. I don't need a way out. Don't you? You've been moved into his building, surrounded by his people, cut off from your old life. Does that sound like protection or isolation? The words hit harder than they should have. Evelyn's hand tightened on the phone. I know it feels like loyalty, Isabella continued, like you're choosing sides in a conflict you understand. But Evelyn, you don't understand, not really. Adrian's empire is built on violence, on fear, on the bodies of people who trusted him. You don't know him. I know men like him. My family has dealt with Moretti's kind for generations. They're all the same. They pull you in, make you feel special, needed. Then they use you until there's nothing left. Why are you telling me this? Because, unlike Daniel, I don't want to recruit you. I want to save you. Isabella's voice softened. Walk away, Evelyn. Tonight. I can arrange protection, relocation, a new life. You'll be safe, free. All you have to do is leave. For a moment, just a moment, Evelyn considered it, pictured herself slipping out of this apartment, disappearing into the night, starting over somewhere Adrian's world couldn't reach. Then she remembered the way he'd looked at her this morning, the way Vincent Castellano had assessed her and found her worthy, the feeling of being seen, truly seen for the first time in years. No, Evelyn said. "You're making a mistake." "Maybe, but it's my mistake to make." Isabella was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, the warmth was gone. "Then you're choosing this. Whatever comes next, remember that. You chose it." The line went dead. Evelyn stood there, phone in hand, heart hammering. She should tell Adrian, should report the call, the offer, the thinly veiled threat underneath Isabella's concern. Instead, she deleted the call from her log and went to finish unpacking. Dinner arrived at 7 exactly. Thai food from a place she'd mentioned liking once, weeks ago. The fact that someone had remembered, had noted it down, should have been touching. It felt like surveillance. Evelyn was picking at pad thai when her door buzzed. She checked the security screen. Adrian, alone, holding a bottle of wine. She let him in. "You didn't have to come," she said. "I wanted to make sure you were settled." He held up the wine. "Peace offering." "For what?" "Uprooting your life in 12 hours. Despite herself, Evelyn smiled. "I suppose I could accept a peace offering." They sat at the kitchen island, gleaming marble, probably worth more than her old car, and Adrian poured 2 glasses of red that definitely cost more than she wanted to think about. "How was your afternoon?" he asked. "Quiet." The lie came easily. "Unpacking, getting oriented. The apartment's acceptable?" "It's beautiful, thank you." "You don't have to thank me, Evelyn. This is as much for my peace of mind as your safety." She took a sip of wine, gathering courage. "Can I ask you something?" "Always." "This morning, at breakfast, when Vincent asked about us, about our relationship, you didn't correct him when he implied we were involved." Adrian's expression remained neutral. "No, I didn't." "Why?" "Because correcting him would have raised more questions, made you seem like a vulnerability instead of a choice." "A choice, yes." He set down his glass. "If we're just employer and employee, you're a weak point, someone who could be pressured or turned. But if there's more to it, if you're here because you want to be, because there's something personal, then you become harder to manipulate. People understand loyalty driven by emotion better than loyalty driven by salary." It made sense. Cold, calculated sense. "So we're pretending," Evelyn said. "Are we?" The question landed like a stone in still water, ripples spreading outward. "I don't know," Evelyn admitted. "I don't know what this is anymore." Adrian stood, moving around the island to where she sat. He didn't touch her, but he was close enough that she could feel the heat of him. "4 months ago, you walked into my office for an interview," he said quietly. "You were overqualified and desperate, and you looked at me like you could see exactly what I was. Most people can't. They see the business, the money, the polish, but you saw through it. Adrian, you should have run. Should have walked out of that interview and never looked back. Instead, you stayed. You took every test I threw at you and passed without flinching. You looked at Marcus's gun and didn't blink. You delivered packages to men who terrify seasoned criminals and came back like it was nothing. I was just doing my job." "No." His hand came up, cupping her face with surprising gentleness. "You were being brave. Braver than you had any right to be." Evelyn's breath caught. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying this stopped being pretend for me a long time ago. I'm saying you're not here because you're useful, Evelyn. You're here because I can't stand the thought of you anywhere else." The confession hung between them, raw and honest and terrifying. "I got a call today," Evelyn heard herself say, "from Isabella Rossi. She offered me a way out, protection, relocation, a new life." Adrian's hand dropped. His expression shuddered. "And?" "I said no." "Why?" "Because I don't want out. I want this, whatever this is." Something broke in Adrian's control. His hand slid into her hair, and he kissed her like he'd been holding back for months and finally couldn't anymore. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate and claiming and full of everything they'd been dancing around since the moment she'd walked into his world. Evelyn kissed him back just as fiercely, her hands fisting in his shirt, 4 months of tension finally breaking. When they pulled apart, both breathing hard, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. "This complicates things," he said roughly. "I know. Makes you a target." "I'm already a target." "Makes it real." "It was already real," Evelyn whispered. "We just stopped pretending." Adrian laughed, the sound startled out of him. When did you get so brave? I learned from my boss. He kissed her again, softer this time, and Evelyn felt something settle into place. This was dangerous, reckless, possibly the worst decision she'd ever made. But it was hers. Adrian left around midnight, reluctantly, after kissing her at the door like he was trying to memorize the taste of her. Evelyn stood there for a full minute after he was gone, fingers pressed to her lips, trying to process what had just shifted between them. Everything, nothing. Something that had probably been inevitable from the moment she'd decided to stay. Sleep didn't come easy. She lay in the unfamiliar bed, in the unfamiliar apartment, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of a building that never quite went silent. Somewhere below, security rotated shifts. Somewhere above, Adrian was probably still awake, working through scenarios and strategies like he always did. Her phone sat on the nightstand, dark and silent. No more calls from Isabella Rossi. No texts from Daniel Hayes. The silence felt heavy, like the moment before a storm breaks. She must have dozed eventually because she woke to her alarm at 6, disoriented until memory caught up. Right. New apartment. New life. New everything. Her phone showed 3 messages, all from Adrian, sent at intervals through the night. 2:47 a.m. Can't sleep. Keep thinking about you. 3:15 a.m. This is probably a terrible idea. 3:16 a.m. I don't care. Evelyn smiled despite the anxiety curling in her stomach. She typed back. Also a terrible idea. Also don't care. The response came immediately, like he'd been waiting. Office at 8. We need to talk. Her smile faded. Nothing good ever followed. We need to talk. She dressed carefully. Black suit, white blouse, hair pulled back. Professional armor. Whatever conversation was coming, she wanted to face it looking like someone who had her life together, even if that was laughably far from the truth. The office was already busy when she arrived, people moving through the halls with the purposeful energy of a hive that never stopped working. A few faces she recognized nodded as she passed. Word had spread fast, apparently. She wasn't just the assistant anymore. Adrian's door was closed. Evelyn knocked twice, heard him call out, and entered. He was at his desk, phone pressed to his ear, but his eyes tracked her movement across the room. He held up one finger, wait, and continued his conversation. I don't care what DeLuca says, the timeline doesn't change. If he can't meet the deadline, find someone who can. A pause. Then make it his problem, not mine. I'll call you back. He hung up, stood, rounded the desk. For a moment they just looked at each other, and Evelyn felt the weight of last night settling between them. Hi, she said, because someone had to say something. Hi. Adrian's mouth curved, almost shy, which was such an odd expression on him that it made her chest tight. Sleep well? Barely. You? Same. The admission hung there, intimate and honest. You said we needed to talk, Evelyn prompted. Adrian's expression shifted, businesslike again. We do. Sit. She took one of the chairs across from his desk. He stayed standing, which felt ominous. Last night changed things, he started. I know. I mean, in terms of how we're perceived. If Vincent figured out there was something between us, others will too. The families watch each other constantly. Every relationship, every connection, it's all intelligence. Evelyn's stomach sank. You're saying last night was a mistake. No. I'm saying it makes you more vulnerable. Adrian finally sat, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. When you were just my assistant, you had value but limited exposure. Now you're something else. Someone I'd protect at any cost. That makes you leverage. So what are you saying? We pretend it didn't happen? I'm saying we need to be smart about this. Strategic. The word tasted bitter. Everything with you is strategic. It has to be. That's how we stay alive. Adrian's jaw tightened. 3 weeks ago, Vincent Castellano's mistress was kidnapped by the Chen family. They held her for 4 days, sent him pieces of her jewelry with notes about cooperation. He paid them $3 million to get her back. Evelyn's blood went cold. Jesus. She's alive, traumatized, but alive. Vincent had to liquidate assets to pay the ransom, which weakened his position with the other families. The Chens gained territory, influence, respect. Adrian's eyes were hard. That's what happens when someone you care about becomes a target. You make choices you wouldn't otherwise make, compromise in ways that cost you. And you think that could happen to us. I know it could. The moment someone realizes you matter to me, really matter, they'll use you. And I'll do whatever they ask because the alternative is unthinkable. His honesty was brutal. No softening, no reassurance, just the cold reality of the world he inhabited. So what do we do? Evelyn asked quietly. We make you untouchable. Adrian stood again, pacing to the windows. We make it clear that touching you isn't just attacking me. It's declaring war on multiple families. We build alliances, leverage relationships, create a situation where the cost of using you as leverage is too high for anyone to pay. How? By making you visible, important, someone whose disappearance would destabilize the entire balance of power. He turned back to face her. I'm putting you in charge of coordination between the families. Evelyn blinked. What? Someone needs to manage communication, schedule meetings, facilitate negotiations. Right now it's fragmented. Each family has their own people, their own methods. It's inefficient and prone to misunderstanding. And you want me to do it. You're perfect for it. Neutral, intelligent, capable of reading people. The families already know you from yesterday. Vincent was impressed. That's rare. Adrian, I don't know anything about... You'll learn. Marcus will train you on protocols, introduce you to the right people. Within a month, you'll be essential infrastructure, someone everyone needs. The scope of what he was proposing hit her like a wave. You want to make me indispensable to your enemies. I want to make you indispensable to everyone, so that your safety becomes everyone's priority, not just mine. It was brilliant in a ruthless, calculating way. Make her so integral to the system that removing her would break it. Turn her from a vulnerability into a necessity. And if I say no, Evelyn asked. Adrian's expression softened slightly. Then I find another way to keep you safe, but this is the best option, the smartest play. For you or for me? For both of us. You get protection, influence, real power. I get to sleep at night knowing you're not going to end up like Vincent's mistress. The image made her feel sick, but underneath the fear was something else. Excitement, maybe. The prospect of being more than invisible, more than protected, actually useful, actually powerful. When would I start? She heard herself ask. Today. Vincent's people are coming by this afternoon to discuss the terms we talked about. You'll sit in, take point on scheduling the follow-up meetings. Adrian moved closer, his hand finding hers. I won't lie to you, Evelyn. This is dangerous. You'll be in rooms with people who've killed for less than you'll be managing, but you'll also have more protection than anyone short of family heads. And you'll be good at it. I know you will. His confidence in her should have felt like pressure. Instead, it felt like possibility. Okay, Evelyn said. I'll do it. Something like relief crossed Adrian's face. He pulled her up into his arms, and for a moment they just stood there, holding each other in the morning light. Thank you, he murmured against her hair. For what? For trusting me. For staying. For being braver than I deserve. Evelyn pulled back to look at him. You keep calling me brave. I don't feel brave. Brave people never do. That's what makes them brave. Before she could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned. What? Evelyn asked. News alert. Patriarch of the Chen family was found dead this morning. The bottom dropped out of Evelyn's stomach. How? Adrian was already pulling up more information on his computer, his expression darkening with each line he read. Gunshot. His apartment in Chinatown. No signs of forced entry, no witnesses. Who would? Could be anyone. The Chens have enemies. But his tone suggested he didn't believe it was random. His phone rang. He answered without looking away from the screen. Yes? A pause. When? Who's claiming responsibility? No, don't do anything yet. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He hung up, already moving. I have to go. Emergency meeting with my people. What do I do? Stay here. Work with Marcus on the coordination protocols. I'll call you when I know more. At the door, he stopped. Evelyn, don't leave the building today. Not for anything. You think this is connected to us? To last night? I think the timing is suspicious, and I don't believe in coincidences. After he left, Evelyn stood in his office, trying to process. A family patriarch murdered less than 24 hours after she and Adrian had made their relationship real. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number again. Against her better judgment, she answered. "I warned you," Isabella Rossi said without preamble. "I told you his world destroys people. You think Adrian did this. I think someone did, and I think it's because of the power plays happening right now. Your boyfriend just upset a very delicate balance." "He's not my—" "Please, everyone knows. You think breakfast with the Castellanos went unnoticed? The families talk, Evelyn, and now someone sent a message written in blood." "What message?" "That the old agreements don't hold anymore. That territory's up for grabs. That anyone trying to expand had better be ready for war." Isabella's voice was cold. Chen was neutral ground, the one patriarch who didn't take sides in disputes. Killing him removes the only mediator the families trusted. Understanding dawned, sickening. Someone wants the families to turn on each other. Very good. And guess who's in the perfect position to exploit the chaos? Your Adrian, with his Brooklyn expansion and his new alliances. He didn't do this. Can you be sure? Do you really know what he's capable of? Evelyn thought about the man who'd held her last night, who'd sent her texts at 3 a.m, who'd looked at her like she was something precious and terrifying. Did she know him? Really know him? "I have to go," she said. "Last chance, Evelyn. Walk away now, before the war starts and you're caught in the middle." "Goodbye, Isabella." She hung up, hands shaking. Marcus appeared in the doorway minutes later. "Adrian said you're with me today. Ready for a crash course in family politics?" "Not remotely," he grinned. "Good. The confident ones never last. Come on." The next 6 hours were a blur of names, faces, protocols. Marcus introduced her to people whose job titles were meaningless and whose actual functions ranged from logistics to enforcement. She learned the hierarchy of the 5 families, their territories, their grudges, their alliances. The Castellanos controlled construction and real estate. The Rossis had the ports and shipping. The Chens had, past tense now, ran gambling and certain financial services. The DeLucas owned legitimate businesses that fronted less legitimate operations. And the Salvatores, oldest and most traditional, considered themselves the arbiters of disputes. Adrian's organization didn't fit neatly into the structure. He was newer, more aggressive, less tied to old rules, which made him dangerous, unpredictable, worth eliminating if you wanted to preserve the status quo. "Here's the thing you need to understand," Marcus said as they sat in a conference room reviewing org charts. "The families don't trust each other. They work together because open war is expensive and attracts attention nobody wants. But they're always looking for advantage. Always. And Adrian wants me to coordinate between them. He wants you to become the neutral party they all trust, someone who can facilitate without picking sides. Like Chen was." Marcus's expression sobered. "Yeah, like Chen was." The implication hung heavy. Chen had been neutral, trusted, essential, and someone had put a bullet in him anyway. "I'm scared," Evelyn admitted. "You should be. Fear keeps you sharp." Marcus leaned back. "But you've got something Chen didn't. You've got Adrian willing to burn the whole city down if someone touches you. That's better than neutrality. That's deterrence." Her phone buzzed. "Adrian. Meeting running long. Don't wait for me for dinner. And Evelyn, lock your door tonight." She showed Marcus the text. He frowned. "Something's wrong," he said. "How do you know?" "Because Adrian doesn't tell you to lock your door unless he thinks there's a reason you'd need to." Evelyn's anxiety ratcheted up another notch. "Should I be worried?" "You should be careful. Different thing." Marcus stood. "Come on, I'll walk you back to your apartment." The building felt different as they moved through it. More tense. People spoke in lower voices, moved with more purpose. Something had shifted in the hours since Chen's death, a current running beneath the surface. At her door, Marcus waited while she unlocked it, then did a quick sweep of the interior. "You're clear. Keep your phone on. Anything weird? You call me or Adrian immediately." Define weird. "Anything that feels wrong. Trust your instincts." After he left, Evelyn locked the door, checked it twice, then stood in her living room feeling absurdly vulnerable. The windows that had seemed beautiful yesterday now felt like exposure. All that glass. Anyone with a scope could see right in. She closed the blinds, ordered food she barely touched, tried to distract herself with television that couldn't hold her attention. At 10 p.m., her door buzzed. She checked the security screen. Adrian, looking exhausted. She let him in without a word, and he pulled her into his arms immediately. "Tell me," she said against his chest. "The Salvatores are calling for a summit. All 5 families. 4 now, I guess. They want to discuss Chen's death, make sure it doesn't escalate into open conflict." "When?" "Tomorrow night. Neutral ground. Everyone brings minimal security." Adrian pulled back to look at her. "You're coming with me." "Is that safe?" "Nowhere safe right now. But I need you there. We need to present a united front, show that we're stable, prepared, not vulnerable to whatever's happening." "Adrian, Isabella Rossi called me again. She thinks you had something to do with Chen's death." His jaw tightened. "What did you say?" "That she was wrong, that you didn't do it. And do you believe that?" The question hung between them, weighted with more than just this moment. This was the test, the line between trust and doubt, between staying and running. Evelyn met his eyes. "Did you?" "No. I didn't order Chen's death. I didn't benefit from it, and whoever did just made my life significantly more complicated." Adrian's hands framed her face. "I'm a lot of things, Evelyn. I've done things that would horrify you, but I didn't kill Chen, and I need you to believe that." She searched his expression, looking for the lie, the crack in his armor, found only exhaustion and honesty and something that looked like fear. "I believe you," she said. The relief on his face was immediate and profound. "Thank you. So if you didn't do it, who did?" "That's what we're going to find out tomorrow." Adrian moved to her windows, looking out at the city. Someone's making a play, using Chen's death to destabilize the families, create chaos. The question is who and why. Isabella thinks you're using the chaos to expand. Isabella thinks I'm responsible for everything from global warming to her morning traffic. Adrian's smile was thin. The Rossis have wanted me out of the picture for years. I'm competition they can't control. Could they have killed Chen to frame you? Possible, but risky. If it comes out that they killed a neutral patriarch just to frame a competitor, the other families would turn on them immediately. Evelyn moved to stand beside him. "This is insane, all of it. People dying over territory and money and pride." "Yes. And I'm in the middle of it now." "Yes." Adrian turned to her. "Last chance, Evelyn. I can still get you out. Set you up somewhere far from here, far from all of this. You could have a normal life." "We've had this conversation already. That was before a patriarch was murdered, before things got real. It's been real since Daniel Hayes tried to recruit me over pasta." Evelyn took his hand. "I'm not leaving, Adrian. Whatever happens tomorrow, we face it together." He kissed her, slow and deep, like he was trying to memorize the moment. When he pulled back, his forehead rested against hers. "You're going to get me killed," he murmured. "How do you figure?" "Because I'll do anything to keep you safe. Make deals I shouldn't make. Compromises that weaken me. That's what happens when you care about someone in this world. Then we'll have to make sure nobody gets the chance to use me against you." Adrian laughed, surprised. "You're serious?" "I am. You said you were making me essential infrastructure? Then let's make sure I'm so good at it that the families need me more than they want to hurt you." "That's ambitious." "I learned from my boss." They stood there, holding each other against the windows, overlooking a city that had suddenly become infinitely more dangerous, and Evelyn felt something crystallize inside her. This wasn't just survival anymore. This wasn't just staying because she was too stubborn to run. This was choice. Active, intentional choice to stand in this world, beside this man, and see what they could build. Even if it killed them both. Adrian stayed until almost midnight again, reluctant to leave, making her promise to keep her phone next to the bed, to call him if anything felt off. After he left, Evelyn lay in the darkness, thinking about tomorrow. A summit with all the families. The first time she'd be in a room with that much concentrated power and violence. She should be terrified. Instead, she felt something closer to anticipation. Her phone lit up with a final text from Adrian. "Thank you for believing me," she typed back. "Thank you for being worth believing in." The response came fast. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be intense. Adrian? Yeah? I meant what I said. We're in this together. I know. That's what scares me. Evelyn smiled in the darkness. At least they were both scared. That felt honest, real, better than the alternative of pretending they knew what they were doing. She closed her eyes and tried to sleep, very aware that tomorrow might change everything. That walking into that summit could be the moment she finally understood what she'd gotten herself into. But she'd made her choice. Now she just had to live with it. Morning came too fast and too bright. Evelyn woke to find a garment bag hanging on her door handle. She hadn't heard anyone enter, which should have been terrifying, but was apparently just how things worked here now. Inside the bag was a dress. Dark green, elegant, with a neckline that suggested confidence without being provocative. Shoes that matched. A note in handwriting she didn't recognize. For tonight, Mr. Moretti's instructions. Facilities. So they were dressing her now. Evelyn should probably object on principle, but the dress was beautiful and fit perfectly when she tried it on, and she had bigger things to worry about than her autonomy over wardrobe choices. The office was even more tense than yesterday. People moved with purpose. Conversations happened in hushed clusters. Adrian's door was closed all morning, meetings rotating through every hour. Marcus found her at her desk around noon. You ready for tonight? No, but I'm going anyway. He smiled. That's the spirit. Here's what you need to know. The summit's at the Salvatore Estate in Westchester. Neutral ground technically, though the Salvatores are hosting. Each family brings their patriarch plus 2 attendees max. Adrian's bringing you and me. What happens at these things? A lot of posturing. Everyone trying to look strong while gathering intelligence. They'll discuss Chen's death, who might be responsible, how to prevent escalation. Probably make some agreements about respecting boundaries, at least until this blows over. And where do I fit in? You observe. Stay close to Adrian. If anyone addresses you directly, be polite, but don't volunteer information. You're there to learn, not participate. That's it? That's enough. These people are going to be watching you, Evelyn, trying to figure out what you mean to Adrian, whether you're a weakness or a strength. Let them see strength. She spent the afternoon reviewing everything Marcus had taught her about the families. Names, faces, relationships, grudges. By the time 5 o'clock rolled around, her head was swimming with information. Adrian appeared at her desk at 6. Ready? As I'll ever be. In the car with Marcus driving, Adrian briefed her on what to expect. The Salvatores are old school, traditional. They'll respect formality and deference. Vincent Castellano you've met. He'll be cordial but watching for advantage. The De Lucas are unpredictable, run by brothers who don't always agree with each other. And Isabella Rossi will be there representing her family now that her father's mostly retired. Evelyn's stomach dropped. Isabella's going to be there? Yes. Problem? She's been calling me, trying to get me to leave you. Adrian's expression darkened. When? Yesterday and the day before. She keeps saying I'm making a mistake, that you're going to get me killed. And yet you're still here. Apparently I like making mistakes. His hand found hers. For what it's worth, I'm glad this particular mistake is sitting next to me. The Salvatore estate was massive, tucked behind gates and walls, and enough security to make Fort Knox jealous. They were stopped 3 times before reaching the main house, a sprawling villa that looked transplanted from Tuscany. Inside, they were led to a formal dining room where a long table was set for 12. 3 families were already there. Vincent Castellano nodded at Adrian, his eyes flicking to Evelyn with recognition. The De Luca brothers, Marco and Tony, were arguing quietly in Italian. And Isabella Rossi stood near the windows, elegant in black, her expression unreadable when she saw Evelyn enter. The Salvatores arrived last, led by an elderly man who moved like every step hurt, but whose eyes were sharp as knives. Gentlemen, he said, his voice carrying despite his age, and ladies, thank you for coming. Please, sit. They arranged themselves around the table, careful choreography of power and position. Adrian pulled out Evelyn's chair before taking his own, a gesture that didn't go unnoticed. Antonio Salvatore remained standing at the head of the table. We are here because one of our own was murdered, he began. William Chen was a friend to this table, a neutral voice. His death diminishes us all. His death creates a vacuum, Isabella Rossi said, one that some might see as opportunity. Her eyes went to Adrian. Is that an accusation, Isabella? Adrian's tone was mild. It's an observation. You've been expanding aggressively. Chen's territory is now unclaimed. I didn't kill Chen. Can you prove that? The tension ratcheted up instantly. Evelyn could feel it, electric and dangerous. Can you? Adrian countered. You've been trying to push me out for years. Maybe you saw an opportunity of your own. Enough. Antonio's hand came down on the table. We're not here to accuse. We're here to prevent war. Someone killed Chen. Until we know who, we maintain the peace. Agreed? Reluctant nods around the table. Now, Antonio continued, we must discuss the practical matters. Chen's operations, his territories, his agreements with each of you. What followed was 2 hours of careful negotiation. Who got what? Who owed whom? How to prevent Chen's death from destabilizing the entire structure. Evelyn watched, fascinated despite herself, as these dangerous people danced around direct conflict while maneuvering for advantage. Adrian held his ground, giving nothing, taking nothing, maintaining that he had no interest in Chen's territories. Isabella didn't believe him. Nobody did. During a break, Evelyn excused herself to the restroom. Isabella followed. So you came, Isabella said, touching up her lipstick in the mirror. I told you I wasn't leaving. Yes, you did. I suppose I hoped you'd reconsider. Isabella turned to face her. You handled yourself well in there. Stayed quiet, observed, smart. Thank you. It's not a compliment. It means you're learning, becoming useful to him. That makes everything harder. Harder for who? For me to save you. Isabella's smile was sad. I wasn't lying, Evelyn. I don't want to recruit you. I don't want to use you. I genuinely think you're in over your head and I'd like to help. By getting me to betray Adrian, by getting you away from him before he gets you killed, there's a difference. Why do you care? Isabella was quiet for a moment. Because I was you once, 20 years ago. Different man, same story. He was charming, powerful, made me feel special, needed. I thought I could handle his world. What happened? He died. Car bomb meant for someone else. I was supposed to be in that car. Would have been if I hadn't stopped to take a phone call. Isabella's expression was haunted. His enemies didn't care that I was just collateral damage. To them, I was close enough to him to be worth killing. Evelyn felt cold. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Learn from it. You think Adrian can protect you? He can't. Not completely. Not when the stakes get high enough. Maybe, but I'm still not leaving. Then you're a fool. Probably. Isabella studied her. You really care about him. Yes. Does he care about you? Really? Or are you just useful? The question cut deeper than it should have. Evelyn thought about Adrian's texts at 3 a.m. The way he'd kissed her like she was oxygen. The fear in his eyes when he'd asked her to believe he hadn't killed Chen. He cares, she said quietly. Then I hope you're both very lucky. Because in this world, caring about someone is the most dangerous thing you can do. Back in the dining room, negotiations had resumed. Adrian's eyes found hers immediately, a question in his expression. She shook her head slightly, nothing's wrong, and took her seat. The meeting concluded with agreements to maintain current territories, investigate Chen's death jointly, and meet again in 2 weeks to assess the situation. As they were leaving, Antonio Salvatore stopped Adrian. A word? Adrian nodded to Evelyn and Marcus. I'll be right out. In the car, waiting, Marcus said, You did good tonight. I didn't do anything. Exactly. You didn't panic, didn't draw attention, didn't make mistakes. For a first summit, that's impressive. What do you think they're talking about? Adrian and Antonio? Nothing good, Marcus said. Antonio doesn't pull people aside for pleasant conversations. Adrian emerged 10 minutes later, his expression grim. He slid into the car without a word. What happened? Evelyn asked. Antonio received a letter, delivered to his house this morning, anonymous. Saying what? Adrian's jaw worked. Claiming I killed Chen with enough specific details about my operations to be credible. Evelyn's blood went cold. But you didn't. I know I didn't, but someone wants the families to think I did. Someone with enough inside information to make the accusation stick. What does that mean? Adrian looked at her, and she saw something she'd never seen in his eyes before. Fear? It means someone inside my organization is working against me. And if I don't find them soon, the families are going to believe I killed Chen, and then we'll have the war nobody wants. What do we do? We find the leak, fast, before the next summit. Adrian's hand found hers, gripping tight. And we pray we can prove my innocence before someone decides to kill me for a murder I didn't commit. The ride back to the city was silent, except for the hum of tires on asphalt and the occasional crackle of Marcus's radio. Evelyn watched the suburbs give way to urban sprawl, her mind racing faster than the car. A mole. Inside Adrian's organization, someone close enough to know operational details, trusted enough to have access, close enough to destroy him. How many people know your schedule? She asked, breaking the silence. Your real schedule, not the public one. Adrian glanced at her. Maybe 10. Why? The letter to Antonio. It had specific details, right? About your operations? Shipment routes, meeting times, financial transactions. His expression was dark. Things only someone inside would know. So we narrow it down. Who has access to all three of those things? More people than I'd like. Operations team, logistics, accounting. At least 30 people with enough access to piece it together. Marcus spoke from the front seat. We need to lock this down, audit everything. Phone records, emails, bank accounts. Someone's getting paid to sell you out. That'll take days we don't have, Adrian said. Antonio gave me 72 hours to provide evidence I didn't kill Chen. After that, he's calling another summit and putting it to a vote. A vote for what? Evelyn asked, though she already knew the answer. Whether I'm guilty. And if the families vote yes? Adrian didn't finish. He didn't have to. Evelyn's hands twisted in her lap. Can they do that? Just decide you're guilty without proof? In their world, yes. The families operate on consensus. If enough of them believe I'm a threat, they'll eliminate me. Proof is secondary to perception. That's insane. That's survival. One rogue family can destabilize everything. They can't afford to wait for certainty. Adrian's jaw was tight. Antonio's being generous, giving me 3 days. He likes me, or at least respects what I've built. But even he won't protect me if the evidence keeps pointing my way. Marcus turned onto the bridge back to Manhattan, the city skyline glittering ahead like a crown of knives. We need to compartmentalize, figure out who knew what when, build a timeline. Already on it, Adrian said, pulling out his phone. He typed rapidly, then paused. Evelyn, I need to send you somewhere safe. Her head snapped up. What? No. This is going to get ugly. I can't focus on finding the leak if I'm worried about you. Then don't worry about me. I'm staying. Evelyn, you said you were making me essential infrastructure, remember? That I'd coordinate between families, become someone they all needed? She leaned forward, catching his eye. Use me. Let me help. This isn't coordination. This is internal security. It's dangerous. Everything about this is dangerous. That stopped being a reason to hide the moment Chen died. Evelyn kept her voice steady despite her racing heart. I know your schedule better than anyone. I've sat in on meetings, handled communications. Let me help trace who had access to what information. Adrian studied her, and she could see him calculating, weighing risk against utility. Finally, he nodded. All right, but you work from the building. No outside meetings, no errands, and Marcus assigns you personal security. I already have Tony. You're getting 2 more. It should have felt like prison. Instead, it felt like trust. Back at the building, Adrian called an emergency meeting in the conference room. Evelyn had never seen so many people assembled at once, his entire inner circle, all looking tense and suspicious of each other. Adrian stood at the head of the table, and the room fell silent. Someone in this organization is selling information to outside parties, he said without preamble. That information has been used to frame me for William Chen's murder. I have 3 days to find the leak and prove my innocence, or the families will vote to eliminate me, which means all of you are under scrutiny until we find who's responsible. The room erupted. Protests, accusations, defensive posturing. Adrian let it run for 30 seconds, then slammed his hand on the table. Enough. Here's how this works. Every phone, every computer, every communication device you use for business gets audited. Tonight. You have 1 hour to turn everything over to IT. Anyone who refuses is immediately suspect. That's a violation of, someone started. I don't care, Adrian interrupted. You work for me. You use my systems. I own this information, and I'm taking it back. If you have a problem with that, there's the door. But if you walk out, you don't come back. Nobody moved. Good. Marcus will coordinate the audit. Anyone with access to shipment schedules, meeting calendars, or financial data gets priority screening. The rest of you, business continues as usual, but you report any suspicious contacts, any unusual requests for information, anything that feels off. Clear? Reluctant nods around the table. One more thing, Adrian said, his voice dropping to something colder. Whoever's doing this, when I find you, and I will find you, you're going to wish the families got to you first. Dismissed. The room emptied quickly, people avoiding eye contact with each other. Paranoia had set in fast, which was probably the point. A mole works best in shadows. Flood the place with light, and they had to scramble. Evelyn stayed behind with Adrian and Marcus. You really think someone will just confess? She asked. No, but I think they'll make a mistake. Panic makes people sloppy. Adrian loosened his tie, looking exhausted. Marcus, coordinate with IT. I want results by morning. On it. Marcus headed for the door, then paused. Adrian, what if it's someone we trust? Someone close? Adrian's expression was carved from stone. Then they made their choice, and I'll make mine. After Marcus left, Evelyn moved to Adrian's side. What do you need me to do? Pull every meeting I've had in the last month. Who attended, what was discussed, what information was shared, cross-reference with the details in that letter to Antonio. You think the leak happened recently? The letter mentioned Chen by name. Chen's death was 3 days ago. Whoever wrote it needed current information. Adrian pulled up files on his laptop. Start here. Operations meetings from the last 2 weeks. They worked in silence for an hour, building spreadsheets, connecting dots. Evelyn's background in organization came in handy. She could see patterns Adrian missed, connections between seemingly unrelated meetings. Here, she said, highlighting a section. This shipment schedule. It was only discussed in 3 meetings. Same 3 people attended all of them. Adrian leaned over her shoulder. James from logistics, Rachel from accounting, and Michael from operations. Any of them have reason to want you gone? Everyone has reason if the price is right, but these 3... He trailed off, frowning. Rachel just bought a new apartment, way above her salary range. Could be inheritance, savings. Could be, but it's worth checking. Adrian pulled out his phone, sent a text. I'm having her finances audited tonight. What if she's clean? Then we move to the next name. Evelyn's phone buzzed. Unknown number. She was getting tired of those. Don't answer it, Adrian said, glancing at the screen. It might be important. Anyone important has your direct number. But Evelyn was already swiping to accept, curiosity winning out over caution. Hello? Breathing. Heavy. Deliberate. Then a voice distorted by a modulator. You should leave while you still can. Her blood went cold. Who is this? A friend. Someone who doesn't want to see you get hurt when this all comes down. When what comes down? Adrian Moretti's empire. It's over. He just doesn't know it yet. The distorted voice carried an edge of satisfaction. The families are turning on him. The evidence is piling up. In 3 days, he's a dead man. But you don't have to die with him. Adrian had moved closer, watching her face. She put the phone on speaker. If you're such a friend, why hide behind a voice changer? Evelyn asked. Because knowing who I am would make you a target. I'm trying to help you, Evelyn. Walk away. Tonight. Disappear. I'll make sure you stay safe. And if I don't, then you'll die with him, and that would be a waste. The line went dead. Evelyn set down the phone carefully, like it might explode. Well, that was concerning. Adrian was already typing on his laptop. It's going to trace that call, see if we can get a location. They used a distorter, probably a burner phone. Probably, but maybe they got sloppy. He looked at her. You okay? Someone just called to tell me you're going to die in 3 days. So no, not particularly okay. Fair point. Adrian's attempt at a smile fell flat. For what it's worth, I don't plan on dying. Good. Because I didn't sign up for this just to watch you get executed by a committee. This time his smile was genuine, if tired. You didn't sign up for any of this. It just happened to you. No, Evelyn said. I chose this. Keep choosing it, even when mysterious phone calls tell me to run. Adrian pulled her close, and she felt him breathe against her hair. You're either very brave or very stupid. Probably both. They stayed like that for a moment, taking comfort in proximity, before reality reasserted itself. There was work to do, a mole to find, a death sentence to escape. Adrian's phone rang. He glanced at it, frowned, answered. Yes? His expression darkened with each second. When? How bad? I'll be there in 20 minutes. He hung up, already moving. There's been an incident. One of our shipments was hit. Hit? Hijacked. 3 trucks, full of merchandise. Gone. Evelyn's stomach sank. The mole? Has to be. Someone gave up the route, the timing, the security detail. Adrian grabbed his jacket. I need to go assess the damage. I'm coming with you. Absolutely not. It could be a trap. Then you definitely need backup, extra eyes. Evelyn, you said I'm part of this now. Let me be part of it. He looked like he wanted to argue, but time was against them. Fine, but you stay in the car, no matter what. Understood? Understood. Marcus met them downstairs with 2 additional security personnel. The drive to the warehouse district in Brooklyn was tense, everyone on high alert. The scene when they arrived was chaos. Police lights, at least a dozen cop cars, and 3 semi-trucks with their back doors hanging open, completely empty. Christ, Marcus muttered. Adrian was out of the car before it fully stopped, Evelyn right behind him despite his orders. A police detective approached, middle-aged, tired-looking, with eyes that had seen too much. Mr. Moretti, your people called it in? Yes. What happened, detective? Reeves. Looks like a professional job. Guards were incapacitated, not killed. Drivers held at gunpoint until the trucks were emptied into another vehicle. Whole thing took maybe 15 minutes. Security footage. Cameras were disabled. Someone knew exactly where they were. Inside job. Had to be. Adrian's jaw worked. What was taken? According to your manifest, electronics, high-end stuff. Street value maybe $2 million. $2 million in merchandise. Gone. But worse than the financial hit was what it represented. Another piece of evidence that someone inside was working against him. I'll need statements from all your people, Reeves said. Guards, drivers, anyone who knew about this shipment. Of course, whatever you need. After Reeves walked away, Marcus leaned in. This is bad, Adrian. Really bad. I know. Whoever the mole is, they're escalating. First the letter, now this. They're not just trying to frame you. They're trying to destabilize your entire operation. Evelyn had been watching the scene, her mind working through logistics. The shipment schedule. When was it finalized? Adrian turned to her. This morning. Why? So whoever leaked it had access to today's updates. That narrows the window. She's right, Marcus said. We pull logs from everyone who accessed the system today. Cross-reference with the people at those 3 meetings. Adrian was already on his phone, calling IT. While he talked, Evelyn noticed someone watching them from across the lot. One of the guards who'd been on duty, a younger guy with nervous eyes. She touched Marcus's arm, nodded toward him. That guard. He looks scared. Marcus followed her gaze. Could just be shaken up from the hijacking. Or he knows something. Without waiting for approval, Evelyn started walking toward the guard. Behind her, she heard Marcus curse and follow. The guard noticed her approach and straightened, trying to look professional. Up close, she could see he was sweating despite the cool night air. Hi, Evelyn said, keeping her tone friendly. You okay? That must have been terrifying. I'm fine, ma'am. You sure? You look pretty shaken up. Yeah. It happened fast, you know. They had the jump on us. How many were there? 4, maybe 5. Masked up. Knew exactly what they were doing. Marcus arrived, and the guard's nervousness ratcheted up another notch. Walk us through it, Marcus said. From the beginning. The guard swallowed. We were doing our rounds, standard procedure. Then they were just there, like they'd been waiting. They knew our positions, our timing. One of them took out the camera before we even saw him. Someone told them where you'd be, Evelyn said quietly. The guard's eyes darted away. I guess. Who knew your route tonight? Just the usual people. Logistics, operations, same as always. But something in his voice caught. A hesitation. Who else? Marcus pressed. Nobody. I swear. You're a terrible liar, Evelyn said, surprised by her own boldness. Who else knew? The guard looked between them, trapped. Then his shoulders slumped. Look, I didn't think it was a big deal. This guy approached me last week, said he was doing security consulting for Mr. Moretti, asked about our procedures, wanted to know if there were vulnerabilities. Marcus went very still. What guy? I don't know his name. He had credentials, seemed legit. I answered his questions. Didn't realize I was doing anything wrong. Describe him. 40s maybe, brown hair, average build, nice suit, had this scar on his left hand, kind of distinctive. Marcus and Evelyn exchanged a glance. She'd seen that description before in the files Marcus had shown her. Michael, from operations. Thank you, Evelyn said to the guard. You did the right thing telling us. After they walked away, Marcus pulled out his phone. I'll have people pick up Michael for questioning. Carefully, Evelyn said. If he's the mole, he'll run the second he knows we're on to him. Good point. I'll make it look routine. Pull him in with a few others for statements. They regrouped with Adrian, who was finishing with the detective. Marcus briefed him on what they'd learned. Adrian's expression was carved from ice. Michael's worked for me for 3 years. 3 years. Money makes people do stupid things, Marcus said. Get him to the office, quietly. I want to talk to him myself. An hour later, they were back at the building. Michael was already there, sitting in a conference room with a cup of coffee, looking confused but not alarmed. Adrian watched him through the one-way glass. He doesn't look guilty. They never do, Marcus said, until they crack. Adrian entered the room. Evelyn stayed outside with Marcus, watching through the glass. Michael, thanks for coming in. No problem, boss. What's this about? We had some trouble tonight. Shipment got hit in Brooklyn. Yeah, I heard. That's rough. Any idea who did it? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Adrian sat across from him, casual, friendly. You worked on the logistics for that shipment, right? I did the routing, yeah. Standard procedure. Who else had access to those routes? Just the usual team. Rachel from accounting, James from logistics, me. Anyone outside the organization ask you about our security procedures? Michael's brow furrowed. No. Why would they? Adrian pulled out his phone, showed Michael a photo. You recognize this guard? Sure, Tommy. He's on the night crew. He says you approached him last week, asked questions about vulnerabilities in our security. The confusion on Michael's face looked genuine. No. I never talked to Tommy about security. Why would I? You tell me. I didn't. Someone's lying, and it's not me. Michael leaned forward. Adrian, I've been loyal to you for 3 years. I've never given you reason to doubt me. Then explain why a guard says you were asking questions. I can't explain it because it didn't happen. Either he's mistaken or someone's setting me up. Adrian stared at him for a long moment, then stood. Stay here. Back outside, Adrian ran a hand through his hair. He's either innocent or a phenomenal liar. There's one way to find out, Evelyn said. Bring in the guard. See if he identifies Michael face to face. Marcus made the call. 20 minutes later, Tommy the guard was escorted into the building, looking like he regretted every decision that had led him here. They brought him to the observation room, showed him Michael through the glass. That him? Marcus asked. The guy who approached you? Tommy squinted at Michael, then shook his head. No, I mean, similar build maybe, but that's not him. The guy I talked to was older, and that scar was more prominent. Evelyn's stomach sank. Not Michael, but someone who looked enough like Michael to pass for him in a brief encounter. Someone who knew Michael's position, his access, his routine. Someone setting him up to take the fall. We've been looking at this wrong, she said slowly. The mole isn't just leaking information. They're creating a trail that leads to someone else. Adrian's eyes narrowed. A patsy. Exactly. Frame someone inside for the leaks, and when you find them, you stop looking. Meanwhile, the real mole keeps operating. So who looks like Michael? Marcus asked. Evelyn pulled out her phone, scrolling through the org chart she'd been studying. Michael has a younger brother, James, who works in logistics, Adrian finished grimly. He was in all 3 meetings, had access to everything. It clicked into place. James had been in the background, quiet, forgettable. The kind of person who could move through the organization without drawing attention. Perfect for a mole. Bring him in, Adrian said. Now. But when Marcus called down to operations, the response made his expression darken. James didn't show up for work today, called in sick. Get his address. I want eyes on him immediately. Within minutes, they had a team en route to James's apartment in Queens. The wait was excruciating, everyone on edge. Finally, Marcus's phone rang. He answered, listened, his face falling. What? Adrian demanded. Apartment's empty. Looks like he cleared out in a hurry. Neighbors say they saw him leaving with suitcases this morning. He ran. Adrian slammed his hand on the table. He knew we were closing in, and he ran. Which means someone warned him, Evelyn said. He had to have been in contact with whoever's paying him. Check his communications, bank records, everything. I want to know who he was working for. The next hour was a flurry of activity. IT pulled James's phone records, email logs, financial transactions. What they found was damning. Regular payments from an offshore account, encrypted communications with an unknown party, and a pattern of information requests that aligned perfectly with the leaked details. He's our mole, Marcus confirmed. No question. But who is he working for? Adrian asked. The answer came from an unexpected source, one of James's emails, recovered from a backup server. It had been sent 3 days ago, just hours before Chen's death. The recipient? Isabella Rossi. Evelyn felt like she'd been punched. Isabella? Adrian read the email, his expression darkening with each line. She's been running him for months, paid him to leak information, orchestrated the hijacking, wrote that letter to Antonio. But why? Evelyn asked. Why frame you for Chen's murder? Because killing Chen and blaming me accomplishes 2 things, Adrian said grimly. It removes a neutral voice from the families, creating instability. And it removes me, her biggest competitor. The Rossis consolidate power in the chaos. She played everyone, Marcus said. Not everyone. Adrian was already on his phone. Antonio needs to see this, now. It's almost midnight, Evelyn pointed out. He said 3 days. I'm giving him proof in 3 hours. Adrian looked at them both. Get Antonio on the phone. Tell him we found the leak. Tell him Isabella Rossi killed William Chen. Antonio Salvatore answered on the 3rd ring, his voice rough with sleep and irritation. This better be life or death, Moretti. It's both, Adrian said, putting the phone on speaker. I found your leak, and proof that Isabella Rossi killed William Chen. There was a pause. Then Antonio's voice came back sharp and awake. I'm listening? Adrian laid it out methodically. James's communications with Isabella, the offshore payments, the timeline that showed the letter to Antonio had been sent from an IP address traced back to a Rossi property. Every piece of evidence they'd compiled in the last frantic hours. When he finished, Antonio was quiet for so long Evelyn thought the connection had dropped. You're telling me, Antonio said finally, that Isabella Rossi murdered a patriarch, framed you for it, and orchestrated this entire crisis to consolidate her family's power. Yes. And you can prove this. Every communication, every transaction, every piece of evidence. I'm sending it to you now. Evelyn heard typing on the other end. A long pause while Antonio presumably reviewed the files. This is compelling, Antonio admitted. But Isabella's not stupid. She'll have explanations. Claimed James was a rogue operative, that she knew nothing about it. She sent him instructions the morning Chen died, Adrian said. Specific instructions on how to access my systems, what information to leak. She's in this up to her neck. Then we need more than emails. We need James, alive, willing to testify. We're working on finding him. Work faster. Without him, this is circumstantial. Isabella's lawyers will tear it apart. Antonio's voice hardened. I'm calling an emergency summit tomorrow night. You bring James and your evidence. Isabella answers for what she's done. But Moretti, if you're wrong about this, if this is some elaborate setup, the families will bury you both. I'm not wrong. For your sake, I hope not. The line went dead. Adrian set down his phone, meeting Evelyn's eyes. We have less than 24 hours to find James. He could be anywhere, Marcus said. Out of state, out of the country? No. Evelyn was pulling up James's file on her laptop. Look at his background. Born and raised in Queens, never lived anywhere else. His whole family is here. So people don't abandon their entire lives overnight. They grab what matters and go somewhere familiar. She scanned his records. He has a sister in Westchester, a mother in a nursing home in the Bronx, an ex-girlfriend in Brooklyn who he still sends money to every month. Marcus leaned over her shoulder. The ex-girlfriend. That's promising. Nobody keeps paying an ex unless there's still something there. Adrian was already on his phone. Get me an address. And pull surveillance on the mother and sister too. He'll contact one of them eventually. While Marcus coordinated with his security team, Evelyn kept digging through James's digital footprint, social media, professional connections, any breadcrumb that might lead them to him. Here, she said, highlighting something. He posted a photo 3 months ago. Some dive bar in Greenpoint. The caption says, "My place." Like a regular spot. Could be nothing, Adrian said. Or it could be where he goes when he needs to think. When he's scared. Evelyn looked up. If I were running, I'd want to be somewhere familiar, somewhere I felt safe. Adrian studied her. You're getting good at this. At what? Thinking like someone with something to hide. She wasn't sure if that was a compliment or a concern, but there wasn't time to unpack it. Marcus had addresses for all 3 locations, the ex-girlfriend, the bar, and the sister's house. We split up, Adrian decided. Cover all 3 simultaneously. Marcus, take the sister. Tony, you're on the ex-girlfriend. I'll hit the bar. I'm coming with you, Evelyn said. Evelyn, we've had this conversation. I'm part of this. She stood, grabbing her coat. Besides, you might need someone who can talk him down. You show up alone and he'll run. I show up and maybe he sees someone who's not a threat. Adrian looked like he wanted to argue but couldn't find a good reason. Fine. But you stay behind me, and if shooting starts, you hit the ground. Agreed. The bar in Greenpoint was called Murphy's, wedged between a bodega and a laundromat in a neighborhood that had gentrified in patches, but still had pockets of old New York. At 3 a.m, it should have been closed, but light leaked from the edges of covered windows. Adrian parked half a block away. Let me check it out first. Together, Evelyn said. If he's in there, you want him to feel cornered or see a way out? You really think you can talk him into turning on Isabella? I think I can try. What's the alternative? Dragging him out at gunpoint? Adrian conceded the point. They approached the bar together, and he tried the door. Unlocked. Inside was exactly what you'd expect. Dim lighting, worn stools, the smell of old beer and desperation. And sitting at the end of the bar, nursing a whiskey, was James. He looked up when they entered, and the fear that flooded his face confirmed everything. Don't run, Adrian said quietly, blocking the door. We just want to talk. James's hand drifted toward his jacket. Adrian's moved too, faster. I wouldn't, Adrian said. Whatever you're reaching for, I'm faster. I'm not armed, James said, his voice shaking. I don't want trouble. Then you shouldn't have sold me out to the Rossies. Adrian moved closer, and James flinched. You leaked my shipment schedules. Gave Isabella ammunition to frame me for Chen's murder. That's a lot of trouble, James. I didn't know she was going to kill him, I swear. She just wanted information, said she was protecting her family's interests. And you believed her? Evelyn asked, stepping forward. Adrian shot her a warning look, but she ignored it. You worked for Adrian for 3 years, saw how he ran things, how he treated people, and you still chose to betray him for money? James's hands were shaking around his glass. You don't understand. She had leverage. Things about my past, about my family. She said if I didn't help her, she'd destroy us. What kind of leverage? Adrian asked. My sister. She has gambling debts. Serious ones. Isabella offered to clear them in exchange for information. I thought it was just corporate espionage. I didn't know about Chen until after. But you kept working for her, Evelyn said. Even after a man died. She said if I stopped, she'd tell everyone I was involved in the murder. That I'd helped plan it. James looked up and there were tears in his eyes. I was trapped. I still am. Adrian pulled out a chair, sat across from James. Here's your way out. You testify against Isabella. Tomorrow night, in front of the families. You tell them everything. how she recruited you, what she asked for, what she threatened. You do that and I'll protect you and your sister. She'll kill me. She'll kill you anyway, Adrian said flatly. You're a loose end. The moment she doesn't need you, you're dead. This way, you take her down with you and live under my protection. And if I say no, then I let the families know where to find you, and you deal with 5 angry organizations instead of just one. Your choice. James looked between them, trapped and terrified. Evelyn felt something almost like sympathy. He'd made bad choices, yes, but he'd been manipulated by someone who understood exactly which pressure points to exploit. If I testify, James said slowly, and Isabella goes down, what happens to my sister's debt? I'll clear it, Adrian said. Consider it payment for your cooperation. And I walk away from this? You walk away breathing. That's more than Isabella's offering. James drained his whiskey, set down the glass with shaking hands. Okay, I'll do it. Relief flooded Evelyn's chest. They had him. They had the evidence. Tomorrow night, this nightmare would end. But Adrian's phone rang before they could move. He answered, his expression darkening. When? How many? Stall them. We're on our way. He hung up, already moving toward the door. We need to go, now. What happened? Evelyn asked. Isabella's people just showed up at the building. They're demanding to speak with me, and they brought reinforcements. The drive back to Tribeca was tense. James wedged in the back seat between 2 of Adrian's security personnel who'd arrived as backup. Evelyn's mind was racing through scenarios, none of them good. Isabella had to know they'd found James, had to know her whole operation was unraveling. This wasn't negotiation. This was desperation. The building was surrounded when they arrived. 4 cars, at least a dozen men in suits that didn't quite hide their weapons. And standing in the center of it all, looking calm and collected despite the small army she'd brought, was Isabella Rossi. Stay in the car, Adrian told Evelyn. Like hell. Evelyn, she knows about me already. Hiding doesn't change that. Evelyn opened her door before he could argue. Besides, you said I'm part of this. Let me be part of it. Adrian looked like he wanted to lock her in the car physically, but there wasn't time. Isabella had spotted them, was walking forward with the kind of confidence that came from holding all the cards. Or thinking you did. Adrian, she said pleasantly, we need to talk. I have nothing to say to you. I think you do. You have something of mine. A former employee who's been spreading malicious lies about my family. Her eyes flicked to the car where James was still sitting. I'd like him back. He's not yours to take. He breached his contract with me. That makes him mine until I decide otherwise. He doesn't work for you, Evelyn said, stepping forward despite Adrian's hand on her arm. He worked for Adrian. You blackmailed him into betraying his employer. Isabella's smile was cold. Miss Carter, still playing in water too deep for you, I see. Has Adrian told you yet what happens to people who get too close to him? How they end up? He's told me enough. Has he told you about Maria Delgado, his last assistant before you? She ended up in a river because someone wanted to send him a message. Evelyn's blood went cold, but she kept her voice steady. Is that a threat? It's a history lesson. People around Adrian have a tendency to die violently. You'd be smart to remember that. That's enough, Adrian said, his voice carrying an edge that made several of Isabella's men shift nervously. You killed William Chen, framed me for it, orchestrated this entire crisis to consolidate power. We have proof, communications, payments, testimony. By tomorrow night, every family will know exactly what you've done. Isabella's mask slipped just for a moment. Fear flickered across her features before she locked it down. You're bluffing. Am I? Ask yourself why I'm not worried about your little army here. Why I'm standing in the open, completely confident. Adrian smiled, and it was predatory. Because I've already won, Isabella. You just don't know it yet. If you had real proof, you'd have gone to Antonio already. I did, 3 hours ago. He's calling an emergency summit tomorrow. You're expected to attend. Adrian stepped closer, lowering his voice. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to get back in your cars and leave. Tomorrow, you're going to face the families and answer for what you've done. And if you're very lucky, they'll make it quick. Isabella's composure cracked further. You self-righteous bastard! You think you're any better than me? We play the same game, Adrian. We just have different methods. The difference is I don't murder neutral parties to frame my competitors. That's a line even I won't cross. You're all so eager to judge me, Isabella said, her voice rising. But what choice did I have? My father's retiring, my brothers are incompetent, and the Rossi family is bleeding power to upstarts like you. I did what I had to do to survive. You murdered an innocent man, Evelyn said quietly. Someone who was supposed to be safe, protected. You broke the one rule that kept this whole system from tearing itself apart. Don't you dare lecture me about rules, Isabella snapped. You've been in this world for 5 minutes. You know nothing about sacrifice, about what it costs to maintain power. Maybe not, but I know the difference between protecting what's yours and destroying what isn't. Evelyn met her eyes. You didn't have to kill Chen, you chose to. And now you're going to pay for that choice. For a moment, Isabella looked like she might do something reckless. Her hand drifted toward her jacket, and Adrian's security immediately raised their weapons. Don't, Adrian said. You're outnumbered, outmaneuvered, and out of options. Walk away while you still can. Isabella stood there, surrounded by guns, her empire crumbling around her. Then she laughed, bitter and hollow. You think this ends with me? The families will eat each other alive without Chen to mediate. You've just accelerated the war you were trying to prevent. Maybe, Adrian said, but that's tomorrow's problem. Tonight's problem is getting you out of my building before I have you arrested for trespassing. Isabella's mask shattered completely. I hope she's worth it, Adrian. I hope she's worth everything you're about to lose. She turned and walked back to her cars, her men following. They peeled away into the night, and Evelyn finally let herself breathe. Is it true, she asked Adrian, about Maria Delgado? Adrian's expression was carefully neutral. Yes. What happened to her? Exactly what Isabella said. Someone wanted to send me a message. Used my assistant to deliver it. He looked at her. That's why I tried to keep you invisible, why I wanted you to stay out of sight. Once people know you matter to me, you become a target. And yet here I am, very visible, very much a target. Yes. Adrian's hand found hers, and terrified every second of every day that I'm going to get you killed. Evelyn squeezed his fingers. Then I guess we'll have to make sure that doesn't happen. The summit the next evening was held at the same Salvatore estate, but the atmosphere was completely different. Where the first meeting had been tense but civil, this one crackled with barely contained violence. All 4 remaining families were present, along with their security. Isabella sat at one end of the table, isolated, her usual confidence replaced by something harder and more desperate. Antonio Salvatore stood at the head of the table, looking older and more tired than before. We're here because accusations have been made, he began. Serious accusations about the death of William Chen. Adrian Moretti claims to have proof that Isabella Rossi orchestrated Chen's murder and attempted to frame Moretti for the crime. Isabella, you'll have the opportunity to defend yourself. But first, we'll hear the evidence. Adrian presented everything methodically. The communications between Isabella and James, the offshore payments, the timeline showing Isabella's knowledge of Chen's movements, and finally, James himself, who stood before the families and testified to everything, the blackmail, the instructions, the murder. Isabella tried to fight it, claimed James was lying, that the communications were fabricated, that Adrian had orchestrated this entire scenario to eliminate a competitor. But the evidence was overwhelming, and when Antonio's people verified the digital trail independently, Isabella's defense collapsed. The families will vote, Antonio said. All in favor of Isabella Rossi being guilty of murdering William Chen and attempting to frame Adrian Moretti? 4 hands went up. Only Isabella's own people abstained. It's decided. Antonio's voice was heavy. Isabella Rossi, you are found guilty by consensus of this body. The penalty for killing a patriarch is exile. You have 72 hours to liquidate your assets and leave the city. If you're found within city limits after that time, the protection of the families is revoked. You will be considered an enemy of all. Isabella stood, her face pale but composed. You're all fools. Without Chen to mediate, you'll tear each other apart within a year. That's no longer your concern, Antonio said. You have 3 days. I suggest you use them wisely. Isabella left without another word, and the room exhaled collectively. Vincent Castellano spoke up. We need to discuss Chen's territories, his operations. Someone needs to manage them. Divide them equally among the families, Adrian said. No one person controls it all. We share the responsibility, the profit, and the risk. There was grumbling, but eventually agreement. It was fair, which in this world was the best anyone could hope for. As the meeting concluded, Antonio pulled Adrian aside. Evelyn watched from across the room, trying not to obviously eavesdrop. "You did well," Antonio said, "exposing Isabella, presenting evidence instead of going to war. That took discipline. I just wanted the truth to come out. The truth is secondary to stability. But in this case, they aligned." Antonio glanced at Evelyn. "Your assistant. She's become quite prominent." "She has. That's dangerous for her and for you." "I know. But you're keeping her anyway." Adrian smiled slightly. "I am. Love makes us do foolish things," Antonio said. "But it also gives us something worth protecting, worth building for." He clapped Adrian on the shoulder. "Take care of each other. This world doesn't leave room for many happy endings." In the car on the way back, Evelyn finally let herself relax. It was over. Isabella was exiled. Adrian was cleared. The families had reached a new balance. They'd survived. "What are you thinking?" Adrian asked. "That I can't believe we actually pulled that off. We make a good team. We do." Evelyn turned to face him. "So what happens now?" "Now we rebuild. Strengthen operations, make sure we're never this vulnerable again." Adrian paused. "And we figure out what this is, between us. I thought we already knew what this was." "We know what it is now. I'm asking what it could be, long term." Evelyn's heart did something complicated. "Are you asking me to stay? Officially?" "I'm asking if you want to. If you can imagine a future here. With me. In this world." She should probably think about it. Weigh the risks, consider her options, make a rational decision based on logic and self-preservation. Instead, she said, "Yes." Adrian smiled, genuine and relieved. "Just like that?" "Just like that. I've made worse decisions with less thought." "Such as?" "Taking a job with a man I was pretty sure was a criminal." "In your defense, I am definitely a criminal." "See? Terrible decision-making." Evelyn leaned against him. "But I don't regret it. Any of it. Even the death threats, the attempted recruitment, the murder investigation, even those, they came with you and you're worth it." Adrian pulled her closer, and they sat in comfortable silence as the city passed by outside. Evelyn thought about how much had changed in just a few weeks, how she'd gone from invisible and forgettable to essential and visible, how she'd chosen danger over safety, power over peace, how she'd fallen for a man whose world was built on violence and control and somehow found honesty in it. 3 months later, Evelyn stood in Adrian's office. Their office now, technically, since she'd been promoted to Chief Operations Officer, reviewing contracts for a new partnership with the Castellano family. The families had settled into a new rhythm after Isabella's exile. Her organization had been absorbed by the others, her operations divided up, her people scattered. There were rumors she'd gone to Europe, was building something new there, but nobody in the city cared enough to confirm. The Rossi's remaining leadership had reached out to Adrian a month ago, asking to negotiate a truce. He'd agreed with conditions. Evelyn had handled the negotiations personally, earning respect from people who'd initially dismissed her as decoration. She'd learned the language of this world, learned how to read between lines, how to offer concessions that looked like compromises but were actually advantages, how to be ruthless when necessary and merciful when strategic, how to be powerful without losing herself in the process. Marcus knocked on the doorframe. "You got a minute?" "Sure, what's up?" "There's someone here to see you, says it's personal." Evelyn frowned. "Who?" "Wouldn't give a name, but she said to tell you it's about second chances." Her stomach dropped. She knew that phrase, had heard it months ago, in a very different conversation. The woman waiting in the conference room was in her 50s, well-dressed, with kind eyes that held too much knowledge. "Miss Carter," she said, standing, "thank you for seeing me." "Have we met?" "No, but I knew Maria Delgado, Adrian's assistant, before you." Evelyn's breath caught. "I was told she died." "She did, and I'm trying to make sure you don't." The woman sat back down, gestured for Evelyn to join her. "My name is Sarah. I run a network that helps people leave this world when it gets too dangerous. I reached out to Maria twice. She refused both times. said she loved him too much to leave. And you think I should? I think you should know you have the option. That if this life becomes too much, if the danger outweighs everything else, there's a way out. Sarah slid a card across the table. My number. No questions, no judgment. You call, and within 24 hours you're somewhere safe with a new identity and enough money to start over. Evelyn looked at the card but didn't pick it up. Why are you telling me this? Because Maria didn't know she had a choice until it was too late, and because I've seen too many good people destroyed by this world. Sarah stood. I'm not asking you to leave. I'm just making sure you know you can. That's all. After she left, Evelyn sat alone with the card. She should throw it away, should feel insulted that someone thought she needed an escape route. Instead, she tucked it into her wallet next to her ID and credit cards. Not because she planned to use it, but because knowing it existed felt like insurance against losing herself completely. Adrian found her there 20 minutes later. Marcus said you had a visitor. Someone offering me a way out, in case I change my mind about all this. He went very still. And I kept her number, but I'm not calling. Evelyn stood, moving into his space. I told you months ago I was choosing this. Choosing you. That hasn't changed. Even though it almost got you killed? Multiple times. Even though. She took his hands. Adrian, I'm not here because I don't have options. I'm here because this is the option I want. You're the option I want. He kissed her, slow and deep, and Evelyn felt the same certainty she'd felt that first night in her new apartment. This was dangerous and complicated, and probably insane, but it was hers. That evening, they had dinner with Vincent Castellano and his wife at a restaurant in Little Italy. Business had evolved into something closer to friendship, though everyone involved understood the foundation was still strategic alliance. To partnerships, Vincent said, raising his glass. To survival, Adrian countered. To both, Evelyn said, and they drank. Afterward, walking back to the car through streets that had once seemed threatening but now felt familiar, Adrian stopped suddenly. What? Evelyn asked. He pulled a small box from his pocket, and Evelyn's heart stopped. I know this is fast, Adrian said. I know we've only been together a few months, but I also know that I want to build something with you. Not just survive this world, but actually build something lasting in it. He opened the box. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, nothing ostentatious. Evelyn Carter, will you marry me? She should think about it, should consider all the implications, the dangers, the reality of binding herself legally and publicly to a man whose business existed in shadows. Instead, she said what she'd been saying since the beginning. Yes. Adrian's smile was brilliant and relieved. He slipped the ring on her finger and it fit perfectly, like everything else between them that shouldn't work but somehow did. You know this makes you a target for life, he said. I was already a target. Might as well make it official. You're insane. Probably, but so are you. We'll be insane together. They kissed on a street corner in Little Italy while Marcus pretended not to watch from the car, and Evelyn thought about all the choices that had led here. Taking the job, staying after Daniel's recruitment attempt, refusing Isabella's offers to escape, standing beside Adrian when everyone said she should run. Every choice had been hers, every risk calculated and accepted. And looking at the man she'd just agreed to marry, she didn't regret a single one. Because the truth was, safety had never made her happy. Following rules had never made her feel alive. She'd spent years being invisible, being forgettable, being whatever everyone else needed her to be. Adrian's world had given her something different. Not safety, but purpose. Not peace, but power. Not invisibility, but a place to stand and declare herself present, capable, essential, worth protecting, worth knowing, worth choosing. 6 months later, they were married in a small ceremony at the Salvatore estate, with the families attending as witnesses. It was strategic and genuine, public and intimate, all at once. Antonio gave a toast about partnership and building futures in difficult times. Vincent spoke about loyalty and trust. Even the De Luca brothers managed coherent well-wishes. And when Evelyn and Adrian danced their first dance as husband and wife, she looked around at the room full of dangerous people who'd become something like family and felt impossibly lucky. Not because this world was safe, it wasn't. Not because her choices had been smart. They probably weren't. but because she'd found something worth fighting for, someone worth standing beside, even when standing meant facing down threats most people couldn't imagine. Later, in the quiet of their suite, Adrian pulled her close. "Any regrets?" he asked. "None. You?" "Only that I didn't find you sooner," Evelyn laughed. "If you'd found me sooner, I would have run screaming. I needed to be ready for this." "And now?" "Now I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." They stood at the window overlooking the grounds, the party continuing below, and Evelyn thought about that first day in Adrian's office. How terrified she'd been, how desperate for stability, for a paycheck, for anything that felt like solid ground. She'd found something different instead, something that required courage instead of caution, strength instead of surrender, something that asked her to be more than she'd ever been, and then helped her become exactly that. It wasn't a fairy tale. Wasn't a romance where love conquered all and everyone lived happily ever after without complications. But it was real, honest, built on choices they both kept making every day to stay and fight and build something lasting in a world designed to tear everything apart. And that, Evelyn thought, was better than any fairy tale could ever be. Because fairy tales were about escaping danger and finding safety, about being rescued and protected and kept away from anything that might hurt you. But real life, real love, was about choosing danger with eyes wide open, about standing beside someone in the fire and deciding that together you were strong enough to withstand whatever came. It was about being seen completely, darkness and all, and choosing to stay anyway. That was what she'd found with Adrian. Not safety, but partnership. Not rescue, but mutual choosing. Not escape from a dangerous world, but a way to navigate it together. And as she stood there in his arms, wearing his ring, bearing his name, Evelyn Carter, Evelyn Moretti now, felt something she'd never quite felt before. She felt home, not in a place, but in a person, in a choice, in the decision to stop running from who she was and what she wanted, and instead run toward it with everything she had. The party below would go on for hours. There would be politics and maneuvering, alliances being tested and formed, the constant dance of power that never really stopped. But up here, in this moment, there was just the two of them. Two people who'd found each other in the most unlikely circumstances and decided that whatever came next, they'd face it together. Not because it was safe, not because it was easy, but because some things, some people, were worth every risk. And that was a choice Evelyn would make again and again for the rest of her life. Because in the end, that's what love was. Not the absence of fear, but the decision that something mattered more than being afraid. Not the guarantee of safety, but the certainty that whatever happened, you wouldn't face it alone. And standing there with Adrian, Evelyn knew she'd found exactly that. She'd found her place in a world that shouldn't have room for someone like her. She'd found power in choosing danger instead of accepting safety. And most importantly, she'd found someone who saw her clearly, all her fear and courage and reckless hope, and loved her not despite those things, but because of them. That was worth everything. Worth every threat, every risk, every moment of terror. Worth choosing again and again, until choosing became as natural as breathing. And as the party continued below and the city spread out around them, full of danger and possibility and everything they'd built together, Evelyn smiled, because she'd stopped running. She'd stopped hiding. She'd stopped being invisible. And in becoming visible, becoming powerful, becoming someone who mattered in this impossible world, she'd finally become herself. That was the real victory. Not surviving Adrian's world, but thriving in it. Not being protected from danger, but learning to face it head on. Not escaping the darkness, but standing in it with someone who understood that darkness wasn't the opposite of light. It was just a different way of seeing. And together, they could see everything.